Good afternoon and welcome to the Community and Economic Development Committee meeting of Tuesday, July 8th. If there are members of the public who'd like to speak on an item, please fill out a speaker card and return the card to me before the item is called. On the roll call for today's meeting, President De La Fuente is excused, Vice Mayor Reed, Councilmember Che, and Councilmember Bruno will be chairing the meeting. Your first item today is approval of the draft minutes from the committee meeting held on June 24th.
Moved and second by consensus. Next item.
Your next item, item 2, is determination of schedule of outstanding committee items.
No changes. I understand there's an item from Mr. Reed. There's an item the staff is going to withdraw. If that's true, can we do that first?
Yes, Madam Chair, we were going to withdraw item 11 and send it back to rules for rescheduling for the 22nd, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. So if anyone's here to speak on item 11, I just want you to know it's being withdrawn.
Okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
You're
So
allowed to
noted.
stay and speak, but it's coming back in 2 weeks.
And Mr. Honda had a card for item 2.
For the record, I'm Sanjeev Honda, East Bay News Service. First, I wanted to note in terms of scheduling that today's meeting on July the 8th and the committee meeting on July the 22nd are the last remaining committee meetings of this legislative session. You will then go on a 9-week break between committee meetings and between council meetings and not come back until the middle of September, at a time when all sorts of interesting developments are taking place and there's an ever-increasing call for public accountability. Under open forum, I'll tell you a story about your break, but on scheduling, I want to refer to 3 other items. The first one is to remind the committee and suggest that you ask the city administrator's office to review the list of all the various boards and commissions that report to this committee and identify which ones do not have quorums and which ones do not have the ability to transact any business. For various reasons, the list of monthly vacancies has dropped off. You used to have at the Rules Committee every month all the vacancies that happen in boards and commissions. As you know, it's been about 6 months. That list has not been coming forward. The second scheduling item relates to the actual fund balances for each of the redevelopment areas and what are the extraordinary expenses that are being incurred as a result of the city's funding money, the house of cards that you call a budget. For example, about 3 years ago, your staff told you that the Central Redevelopment District, which is the downtown area, was broke. And therefore, the council members' salaries and benefits, 50% of which come out of redevelopment funds, are now paid entirely out of the Coliseum redevelopment area. That's a citywide cost, but it's being paid out of one redevelopment area at the expense of others. And that adds up to a tidy sum of money now, given that your salaries are in excess of $73,000 annually per council member. And the final area for scheduling also is on the economic development issues. If there's a timeline that you could ask for when the presentations will come back on the specifics of the Army base. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved and second by consensus.
Yes, ma'am. Your next item, item 3, is pieces of legislation dealing with the Central City East Redevelopment Project Implementation Plan. The first is the agency resolution adopting the 2008-2013 Implementation Plan for the Central City East Redevelopment Project. And the second is a resolution authorizing a 1-year extension of the Project Area Committee for the Central City East Redevelopment Project to July 29th, 2009. And this item will also appear as a public hearing on the July 15th City Council agenda, and you have 2 speakers on the item.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Larry Gallegos, Community and Economic Development Agency, Redevelopment Division. Staff is seeking authorization for 2 pieces of legislation. 1, an agency resolution for the adoption of a second 5-year implementation plan for 2008 through 2013 for the Central City East redevelopment project area. And 2, a city resolution authorizing a 1-year extension of the project area committee. The adoption of the agency resolution is necessary to satisfy state law requirement that the agency adopt implementation plans for each redevelopment project area every 5 years. With regards to the 1-year PAC extension, in 2003, the Central City East redevelopment plan was adopted and the project area was created, and the first 5-year implementation plan was simultaneously adopted. The PAC has been renewed in previous years, and the current date of expiration is July 29, 2008. Agency staff has spent the past several months working with PAC and the outside consultants on the second 5-year implementation plan. The PAC has reviewed and recommended approval of the implementation plan for the Central City East project area. In addition to the implementation plan, the PAC has been meeting monthly for the past 5 years and has worked actively on the development of projects and programs for the Central City East project area. The PAC has served as an advisory body to council regarding countless projects and programs during the first 5-year implementation plan. Extending the Central City East PAC for an additional year will allow for continued community participation in the decision-making process regarding how Central City East programs and projects are implemented in the project area. The PAC has shown its ongoing commitment in working with the agency over the course of the past 5 years. It is increasingly important to have the PAC's input on how Central City East programs and projects are implemented as additional funds are allocated to the area to revitalize the community.
If you could wrap up, I think that.
Essentially, in summary, staff is recommending that the committee approve the agency resolution and the city companion resolution regarding the second 5-year implementation plan and the 1-year PAC extension. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Thank
can I
you.
ask one question?
Sure.
Why would we not extend the PAC beyond the 1 year, but the whole balance of the 5 years?
The way that the current state law is written, it only allows for a 1-year extension, so that's what we can do.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We had some speakers.
Councilmember Kernahan and Sanjeev Honda.
Thank you.
And at this time, oh, no, you don't.
No, we don't need to.
Thanks for hearing me. Generally speaking, I'm in favor of the 5-year plan. All the sub areas worked hard and came up with their own priorities. But I do have a question about the language that appears on page 19, having to do it with the Elmhurst neighborhood, and it says the Elmhurst neighborhood has deferred its redevelopment efforts so that all the Central City East neighborhoods could join in the redevelopment effort, and as such should be given priority for funding the MacArthur Boulevard Streetscape project. And then it says an account shall immediately be established for funds for the MacArthur Boulevard Streetscape project, and it shall receive any unused and uncommitted streetscape funds from a previous year. Anyway, I just don't remember that part being discussed by the PAC, and so if staff, it either could be answered here, I'd wait and find out.
Well, we can
You-
answer
you
for
can
you
have
here.
'em,
If they
come
have an
back.
answer, let's try to get it.
And also the other related question I have here is on the same page, it has a chart listing total funding for the various streetscape projects throughout the Central City East thing. And and it shows the 2 streetscape projects in my district together get $6 million. Then it's got the MacArthur Boulevard project augmentation for $7.5 million. And then another phase of MacArthur Boulevard project for $3 million. So, and then the Fruitvale area gets about $7.7 million. So I'm wondering why these allocations for streetscape money are not even within the districts. And in the later part of this, it looks like each sub area got $16 million each over a 5-year period. And so my question to staff is, does this chart on page 19 show, is this money all coming out of the $16 million that each sub-area gets? For instance, say maybe one sub-area prioritized streetscape higher than they did something else, so they should be able to spend however much they want. I understand that. But I just want to make sure that there isn't an imbalance geographically among the streetscape projects. I mean, if it's all within that $16 million for each sub-area, that's okay with me. If it's some priority for something else, I don't think that's fair, because I think the policy generally was that the whole geographic area should try to share. So
Why
those
don't
are
you
my
stay
questions.
there and let's get your answers.
I mean, I can answer that question for you, but I'll let
Well,
Larry
I'm
do it.
interested in both of you.
And then we can come and we can debate the issue. But, Madam Chair.
Why don't we get staff
No,
and
go
then
ahead,
get
Larry.
yours?
No, you go ahead.
Can you answer that question? So there's 2 questions on the table.
Right. Well,
Why don't we start with the streetscape, because that's the last question.
essentially, what the PAC had recommended, because historically there has been some equity questions that have been raised regarding the division of the tax increment funds for each sub area. And so what we thought would be equitable was to spread the net tax increment across the board through each of the sub areas equally. So if I understand the question correctly, this was an attempt to try to create this equity between all of the sub areas. The
Her
streets-
question is it, what was the pot
16 million.
per district,
Yes.
per area? So I assume Ms. Kernahan's question is, did her area get their 16 million, or did it go to somewhere else? No?
Quite it. It's, stay close there, Larry. I see that each area got $16 million, but I also see this other chart showing streetscape money. So, and then I also see this language saying that MacArthur has a higher priority than other streetscapes, so my questions are twofold. One, why is MacArthur getting the higher priority? And that Councilmember Reed can probably address. And two, is that higher priority allowing them to access monies beyond the $16 million in each sub area
Gregory,
that other people
Madam
aren't?
Chair, can
Yeah.
Gregory or either Stephanie Floyd that's here?
Yes,
That
and
worked
you
on
and
the project.
yourself. Then let's have you.
Go ahead,
Gregory,
Gregory.
try, and then I'm going to call on Mr. Reed.
Okay. I think the more direct response is that because of looking at the first 5-year plan for Central City East, there was quite a bit of money that went into Councilmember Kernahan's district for projects within that 5 years. So we have to show a balance over each of the plans that for each sub area, each district within the redevelopment area. So this is kind of this plan is somewhat of a correction from what had previously been allocated for that district in the first 5-year implementation plan.
Mr. Reed.
I think Gregory answered it. Where's the money that was originally programmed for the?
Could I say,
You-
I would really,
may I make a suggestion now?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure we're going to figure this all
Yeah.
out, and there's a lot of items. Why don't we move this to council, see if you can get your answers
in writing. And I
In
would,
writing,
in writing,
this-
and yes. And
this
I-
week, and then if not, it will be an item at the council. Would that work for you?
Yes, and I'd actually like them to put it in the supplemental agenda. And if there is a history that my district or my sub area got more money than the others last time, please put that in writing so we can see what the imbalance
Okay, but let's
is.
be really clear, Ms. Kernahan, do not leave that dais.
Okay.
Let's be very clear what the question is, and have that as part of the motion, if that's okay. So,
My questions are, what is the reason that the MacArthur streetscape has a higher priority than the others? And if that is based on a historical record of expenditures, I want to see those expenditures and where they went in each sub area in the previous 5 years. And I also want to know if are the streetscape projects in each sub area going to be treated equally with respect to accessing the contingency fund that's in here?
okay, so that's a new question. Okay, let's
do,
put
but-
those, so can I have a motion?
Yes. That's fine.
Okay,
Move
so
staff
this
recommend-
item will be moved with the addition of those questions that will be in a supplement in writing for city council.
And can you make sure that you put all the history?
Yeah, we will include the history. Even among the PAC members, this continues to be an issue, and it's simply because actually the MacArthur Streetscape was one of the projects that led to the formation of the redevelopment
agency.
area, and it was one of the original commitments that the agency and the city had made to fund, and was the first streetscape project out of the gate for that redevelopment area, and that's why the commitment has we have stood by our commitment through the formation of this redevelopment area to make sure that project is funded and proceeds in a timely manner. But we'll be more than happy to put that in a report, in a supplemental report.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Yes.
And we worked very hard to get that whole corridor all the way down and encompass your district, Ms. Kernahan, as a redevelopment area, because originally it was only supposed to just include my district. But when Dan Vanderpreem was here and Gregory, they convinced my constituents that it made logical sense that we would extend it all the way down to the Oakland 9th area because of the amount of tax increment money that could be generated for the whole Central City East. So Gregory will make sure he put that history in writing.
Mr. Honda.
For the record, I'm Sanjeev Honda, East Bay News Service. And the people who redraw the district boundaries for the state legislature every 10 years should look to Oakland and how to really confuse the issues that nobody understands who is where. Let me point out that one of the original ideas behind former city manager Robert Bobb's idea of project priority funds, basically then became known as PAYGO, short for pay as you go, which used to be about $300,000 per council member and mayor per fiscal year, was that a council member could designate a portion of those funds to go to a specific project. And because that project had additional funding, it moved to the head of the list. And so it was one way to bypass public process. And it was a way to get each of the council members to basically get control over their own district to some degree and do what they wanted. Now, what's happened is, obviously, the original purpose, which was that there would be full public disclosure, did not happen. As an example, the 8 council members collectively are right now sitting on $7.4 million in project priority funds, PAYGO funds, municipal improvement capital funds, Measure B transportation, PAYGO, and others. And only about 1.4 million of that is actually restricted by any kind of law. The other 6 million is discretionary money and could be moved anywhere. In a discussion earlier today with the chair of the finance committee, she told me that she's already encumbered, as an example, all the money that she has. But that's where the public process falls short. The public does not know that money's encumbered. The city staff does not know that money's encumbered. When you do a budget printout, that money does not show as encumbered, and that defeats the whole purpose of transparency and letting the public know what is being done in their name and with their money. And that's what ties in here as well. What you're doing is, again, you're taking what are going to be equal pots of money, but you are gerrymandering the lines and boundaries. And while that may be within the letter of the law, what you're doing is creating further confusion, not only among the public, but even the council members. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved in second with those additions. Non-consent. Next item.
Actually, it's a public hearing for July
Public
15th.
hearing. Fine.
Your next item, item 4, is receive the annual report regarding the former Oakland Army Base from the West Oakland Community Advisory Group, and you have 7 speakers on the item.
Chairperson Bruner and members of the committee, I would like to introduce to you, my name is Alex Greenwood with the Community and Economic Development Agency, and I'd like to introduce Brian Beveridge of WOCAG, who will be giving the report. Thank you.
And how long is this report?
We're estimating 3 minutes.
Thank you. Could people,
The
is he
representative
here?
of WOCAG could come down, Mr. Beveridge.
Let's get the speakers.
Councilmember Nadell, Ellen Wyrick Parkinson, Richard Nevlin, Steve Lowe, Ray Kidd, and Sanjeev Honda.
I'll just be very brief. I wanted you to really read the report. I'm sure those on the committee did, but I hope my other colleagues on the council do as well. It very much reflects the community's view, and WOCAG is not just the West Oakland community, but other members as well. I thought it was very well written and really addresses the issues of making sure that the Army Base project really works to help alleviate some of the problems in West Oakland with respect to industrial development and trucking, as well as making it an exciting development. So I just want to call attention to the fact that it's very well written and really encompasses our views.
Thank you. Is the speaker here that was supposed to be here?
Good afternoon. I apologize. I was indisposed a moment.
They said you have 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. Wow. All right. Thank you. I'm partly here on behalf of, well, I'm here on behalf, my name is Brian Beveridge. I'm here, a member of the WOCAG. Here partly on behalf of George Bolton, who's the chair of the WOCAG. just to introduce our report to you, which I believe you all received in your packet. Let you know it is being defined as not the annual report, but an annual report. Also, just to give you a sense of our deliberations, we tried to approach the report not from the standpoint of a parcel of an isolated parcel of land with which something can be developed, but to look at it in a more, you might say, holistic approach, trying to look at how the Oakland Army Base, the city's share of that property, fits in to both its neighboring community of West Oakland, the larger flatlands neighborhoods of Oakland and the city itself, and even in some cases, the multi-city region along the east side of the bay. We've attempted to take a look or address issues of not only the highest and best use for jobs, but issues of transportation and the environment as well, and the future potential for green growth. It was, I believe, an honest effort to do a good report, to provide meaningful information, and it came out of a group collaborative writing process. No one person ran home and typed a report. The items in the table of contents all came out of a group outlining process, and then the individual members of the WOCAG sort of filled in the details from the perspective of our ongoing discussions. We hope that the council will look at that, and the committee will look at it in that comprehensive regard. And I believe those of you who have been around this process for a while that will see that it not only harkens back to some of the earlier, probably the earliest goals for the reuse of this property, in the sense of community benefit for the people of West Oakland and the people of the flatlands. But it also takes into account new and very contemporary ideas of green growth and Oakland's general redevelopment, its retail corridor development, and what we think are probably, while maybe the details are arguable, the overarching themes are goals of all Oaklanders. So with that, I will allow some of the other members to speak on some specific issues that we think are important within the report. Thank you.
And have you called the speakers? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Lowe. I'm a vice president of the West Oakland Commerce Association, also a WOCAG member, and have been following this process for more than 10 years, and have had a lot of time to think through the issues and understand them pretty well. As a matter of fact, one of the first things that we tried to do was to bring the produce wholesalers onto the base with a plan that would not only address the problems that they had, but also some of the community concerns. And at one point we had an agreement with the Alameda County Community Food Bank and some West Oakland concerns like the Coalition for West Oakland Revitalization. And unfortunately, there was a time when the produce merchants were dissociated from the base, and now they're back. But the community benefits are not. That package needs to be addressed, and we need to see that the Alameda County Community Food Bank can be brought back into the equation so that, whether it's through the master developer or the wholesalers themselves, the tremendous amount of food that is thrown away every day, nutrition that could be feeding kids in the community or families that are needy, that needs to be back in there somehow. So that's my main concern right now, although we are thinking about how all this is going to affect the port and the ancillary maritime support services that are on the base right now and need to be reconfigured so that they can be more productive in some sort of super efficient way that will help us all out. So I'm mindful, Councilmember Chang, of your remarks at a previous meeting where you thought that industrial was the way for the base to go. I hope that will follow through today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Kidd. I'm also a member of the WOCAG. I just want to second what Brian said that about this report. I think it's a very thoughtful, comprehensive report that has real connective tissue, is often lacking in such reports, and I think it's a significant contribution to the redevelopment chronology of the Army base. I just want to highlight one or two things that are in the report. On page 9, it talks about a couple of things regarding incompatible uses. At the very top of the page, it talks about truck services and parking, recycling, and the produce wholesalers, which would leave their former sites available for more appropriate, i.e., lower impact commercial uses. And then jumping down a couple of paragraphs on 2.5, the first full paragraph, recycling is a critical link in the waste reduction chain for Oakland and the region. A very significant portion of Port of Oakland export cargo is scrap paper and metal bound for Asian ports. However, our recyclers have in most cases proven to be poor neighbors in the Oakland flatland residents, idling trucks, etc. I just wanted to say I live within 3 blocks of where I live in the Clawson neighborhood. There are 2 major recycling operations. One of them is the largest bottle and can recycler in California. The other one is also a recycler and a aluminum smelter, which is the largest aluminum smelter west of the Mississippi. Both of these have caused considerable anxiety in the neighborhood. And to be able, both of them one of them has told me directly that he would love to move out of the neighborhood. Another one has, I've heard indirectly, he would like to move. Having these 2 operations move to the Army base or some other place would free up significantly, in this case 4 or 5 square blocks of land that could be used for more neighborhood friendly and more productive uses for the neighborhood. And I would also want to just, in my last sentence here, say that to highlight on page 13 the idea of land swaps. I think the city should explore the notion, the idea of exploring with the port, swapping land to help benefit the port and the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Warwick Parkinson, and I'm also a resident of the Oak Center area. I'm here. I support number 4 on the agenda. And one thing I want to add is I saw one of the recyclers last night, which was Mr. Wang. And Mr. Wang says as soon as somebody is able to swap and get him to the Army base, he's ready to go because he's worked with us on this previously. So most of the material that's in the report was done previously by the WOCAG committee. And I'm a member of the WOCAG committee. I was one of the ones that was selected when Mr. Dellum came to Oakland and made the selection with Councilman Ms. Payton. And so I want to say that I support the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Nevlin, member of WOCAG since 1996 and formerly a member of EBCRC committees, EBCRC intern, and the WOCAG report that's in your packet is the result of individual effort of WOCAG members and essentially not something that was heavily supported by staff. This, I think, is sad that a piece of land, the former Army base, doesn't have, as though it's raising money for the city of Oakland, doesn't have the solid staff support that it should, and the funding for assistance in minutes and other things, as it's, what is that called, advertised in the lovely brochure, it really needs to be better funded and supported. The beginning of 2007, food and drink, or sodas and coffee, were eliminated from the WOCAG meetings. And Nancy Nadell knows that as a co-chair of the environmental committee for EBCRC, the pizza and soda meetings at Jim Levine's office in Emeryville produced agreement between the Department of Toxic Substances, the U.S. Navy, the Rose Society, Sierra Club, and lots of other things. I would hope you'd review what I've written and presented to you. There are things that are needed at the Oakland Army Base property, like a police substation, a firehouse, and some solid plan for public transit so that the people who go to work there in the beginning don't have to have an automobile and can use public transit established as part of the leading edge of the development of the base. Thank you.
For the record, I'm Sanjeev Handa, East Bay News Service. The first thing I wanted to point out is that the West Oakland Community Advisory Group is a city council created group. Therefore, all the provisions of the Ralph M. Brown Act and the Sunshine Ordinance apply. One of those is that there must be minutes for every meeting that is held of every WCAG meeting and its standing committees, that those minutes must be made available for public inspection upon request, and that the final minutes must be made available to the public within 5 business days of their adoption. If minutes are not being kept or action summaries, that is a violation of the Sunshine Ordinance. Let me also remind you that WCAG unfortunately has suffered, as have many other components of the community in West Oakland, by the negligence, malfeasance, and incompetence that permeated the management of the Oakland-based Reeves Authority for many years. As you will recall, this city sued Caltrans, as did the Port of Oakland, over the use of some of the Army-based land by Caltrans for rebuilding the Bay Bridge. As part of a routine public records request, I was somewhat flabbergasted to discover that the original and the follow-up letters from Caltrans were still sealed and sitting in a box, had never been opened. And when your staff complained that they had never heard from Caltrans, well, these were documents with postal stamps, one with certified mail stamp on it, somebody from the OBRA staff had signed for it. And so millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money got spent on sets of lawyers representing the city, the port, and Caltrans, and the California Attorney General's office, 4 separate sets of lawyers, because somebody on the OBRA staff, a component unit of the city of Oakland, didn't know how to open a letter. So that's something I just wanted to point out. And the final thing I want to point out is that WCAG still is not listed in the directory of boards and commissions. There is still not a posting of some of the agendas. There's still not a compliance with the provisions of the Sunshine Ordinance. Those are all, and Mr. Linda, I know it's not your fault, you're just getting here, but you'll hear a long litany of me from all the things that are not being done, that hopefully you and your staff can now take corrective action. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it all the speakers? Any comments or just a motion? Can I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Reed, second by Mr. Chang, by consensus.
Receiving and filing, or are you
We
going
are
to forward?
receiving and filing. I'm sure they will participate in the next discussion.
Your next item, item 5, is action on report and recommendations regarding the selection of a master developer for a 108-acre portion of the former Oakland Army Base, and you have 35 speakers on that.
And is this a presentation?
Yes.
And how long is this presentation?
I'll do it as fast as I can. I probably
How long is this presentation?
10 minutes or so.
Okay, we're going to time you here. 10 minutes.
Would you like me to set the timer? I can.
Thank you. Again, I'm Alex Greenwood with the Community and Economic Development Agency, and today we're asking you to approve a series of items that will allow staff to complete the selection process for a master developer for the Oakland Army Base. You can see from this map, the area shown in gold is 165 acres of land that the City Redevelopment Agency took possession of in 2006. It occupies a very strategic importance for all of Oakland. It sits at the junction of 3 major interstates at the base of the Bay Bridge, at a very visible part of Oakland's waterfront directly across from San Francisco, directly adjacent to the Port of Oakland and interwoven into the fabric of the West Oakland neighborhood. The city's portion of the Army Base is known as the Gateway Development Area, and for planning purposes, we've subdivided it into the West, Central, East, and North Gateways. In the course of planning for the use of our Gateway Development Area, staff has been coordinating with the port, which has also received a total of about 700 acres of land through the base closures that have occurred in Oakland. We also commissioned a series of planning studies. Most recently, we worked with the firm of Design, Community, and Environment, which released their final report in 2007. They studied a series of 4 different development scenarios and looked at the possible different uses for the Army base. Some of the major uses that were identified included various retail, logistics, and office uses. Based on this information and the conclusion of the planning process, the agency board directed staff to issue an RFQ in order to gather a wide range of information from qualified developers and to report back to the agency board. This is the area shown in red outline that was the subject of the RFQ. It's a total of 108 acres and includes the west, central, and a portion of the east gateway. The RFQ was issued in January 2008. We received a total of 13 responses by the March deadline. These next slides show some of the many city and agency goals that were discussed in the RFQ and that the various RFQ responders attempted to integrate into their information that they provided. They include such diverse goals as job creation, economic development, labor relations, urban design goals, and gateway development. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, as a result of the RFQ, we were in a very short amount of time able to receive 13 very strong responses from developer teams, 8 of whom proposed a concept for the entire 108-acre site, and 5 of which had smaller standalone projects. We'll go through those now. These are the 8 firms that are proposing large-scale master development of the Gateway Development Area. And these 5 are proposing standalone projects, in effect saying, we're not interested or necessarily capable of doing the entire 108-acre area, but we do have projects that we think are compatible with your vision for the Army base, and we'd like you to consider our projects within your process. All 13 of the RFQ responses were reviewed thoroughly by a group of city staff as well as technical consultants, which were formed as part of a technical advisory group. The results of their analysis are attached to your staff report. Next, the RFQ responses were forwarded to the mayor's 12-person review panel. All 13 developer teams were interviewed by this team of volunteers, and there was thorough deliberations after the interviews. And now the results of the review panel are being forwarded to the agency board today and to the full council on July 15th. In analyzing the RFQ responses, several policy issues were looked at. These are discussed in much greater detail in your staff report, but everything from the nature of the type of development, whether it should be mixed use, how dense is feasible on the site, financial feasibility, whether retail should be included in the overall design scheme, and if so, to what extent, how can open space be integrated into the overall scheme, and other policy issues. I want to take some time now to go over the review panel recommendations. The first recommendation, we'll have the next slide, is that the agency should approve a well-articulated, coherent, preferred development concept for the Gateway Development Area. And this concept would emphasize commercial and industrial mixed use. It is perfectly appropriate to include retail as part of this. However, retail was not envisioned as the primary use, but as a secondary use only. It's important to have very high quality architecture and as high density as possible, as is feasible given the site conditions. And every aspect of the site should be attended to as far as high quality urban design and architecture, but particularly the West Gateway, which offers stunning views of the city and is the most visible. Next, the second recommendation from the review panel was that although the RFQ process allowed us to gather a good amount of information from a broad range of developers in a very short amount of time, we did not get enough information to really make a selection of one developer. And furthermore, no single development team stood out as the breakaway favorite. Therefore, the recommendation of the review panel was to have a second part of the selection process, a request for proposals. A request for proposals would allow a direct comparison of the teams based on the agency's preferred development concept. It would allow much more specific information based on a grounded analysis of the site conditions, market realities, financial realities, and it would also force the development teams to invest a much greater commitment of time and expense over a 4+ month period, which would allow us at the agency board level to obtain much more specific proposals with which to make the final decision. Because of the nature of the RFP and the request for developers to spend such an amount of time and expense in developing a detailed proposal, that dynamic really works best with a smaller selected number, a shortlist, if you will, of developer teams. And so one of the major tasks of the review panel was to determine which of the teams should be invited to participate in the final stage of the selection process. In judging the different teams, these are some of the issues that were considered and are discussed more in more detail in the staff report. An understanding of the regulatory and site issues, the team's expertise and tenant relationships, specifically as they relate to what the agency's preferred development concept would be. And I want to emphasize that all of the developer teams that responded to this really proved themselves to be highly skilled and experienced teams, but only a few of them were really felt to be directly relevant to the direction that was recommended for the Gateway development area. They also, financial capacity and several other aspects of the team qualifications were taken into account. And so, as detailed in your staff report, the recommended shortlist of developer teams includes A&B in partnership with California Capital Group, Federal Development, First Industrial Realty, and Prologis Catellus. With respect to the 5 smaller projects that were proposed, 2 of those stood out as having very special needs as far as the land that they would require and also the economics that made them very difficult to locate outside of the Army base, and that also had specific benefits to the Oakland community and Oakland's economy. Those 2 projects were the Oakland Film Center and the produce market. Relocating the produce market out of Jack London Square would create redevelopment opportunities for downtown. It would retain a business that's been represented in Oakland for 90 years and is well aligned with the types of uses that we want to see in the Army base. Locating the Oakland Film Center on a portion of the Oakland Army base could serve as the anchor to bring in an entire community of film production industries, which is a fast-growing and strategic industry that we want to encourage in West Oakland. The other remaining standalone projects were felt to be important, and by all means, we encourage them to negotiate with the ultimately selected developer for the Army base. However, those projects were felt to be easier to locate either on port land or on privately owned land elsewhere in Oakland. There are a number of new steps that need to take place, including issuing the RFP and bringing it back to the master developer. And in summary, I want to say, I would like to, next slide, please. We're asking the agency to approve the review panel's preferred development concept, to allow staff to go forward to issue an RFP, which would be brought back to the agency in 4 to 6 months, to approve the short list of developers for the RFP, and to include the film center and the produce market in the goals of the RFP. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to take your questions.
Let's hear from the speakers. We have 35 speakers. I know we have, I assume, Ms. Nadell, have you signed up? Do you want to speak at the beginning or the end, or? Thank you.
I want to just take a moment to thank the staff and the public members who reviewed all the proposals. It was quite a body of information to review, and they really did it with whole hearts and a lot of attention and a lot of careful recommendations, so I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the incorporation of the produce market and the film arts in the project. What's missing is customs inspection, and I know that could be on port land, but it should be somewhere defined before we say it's not going to be on this land, because if we don't accommodate that, and currently that's on the city side, the goods that have to be inspected have to be taken off-site somewhere farther away, another truck trip, perhaps brought back. So it really is essential that we keep customs inspection very close by, because it's so necessary to avoid additional truck traffic. The staff recommendation is one that I support. I think that we do have some very promising projects. The idea of putting out an RFP and focusing it on 4 groups, I think is the right direction. I have one project that looks to me like it's more of a winner than the others, but I really do feel like it puts us in a better negotiating position to look at all 4 and to really look at the depth of their financial capabilities as they come forward with more detail. So I also support that recommendation, but I would include in the 4th recommendation, the customs inspection should also be included.
Thank you.
Not have to appear for number 9. I support number 9, the St. Mary's Center. Then you don't have to call it.
Would you call the names?
Wallace Murfitt, David Mack, Michael Goldman, Richard Nevlin, Felix Guillory, Gary Gusman, Sharon Cornu, Aiden Berry, Rosa Deanda, Michael McDonald, Jerry Mozo, Xavier Gardner, Ellen Parkinson, Shabniz Manji, Abdel Saharan, Dexter Vizinal, Harry Mamazuki, Rodney Anderson, Sarah Green, Guy Green, Gene Hazard, Ben Nichols, Sean House, and he has ceded time to him, about 1 person, Sandra King, Shirley Bummel, Phil Tagami, Sanjeev Honda, Reverend Michael Wallace, Bill Abduyu, Dwayne Wiggins, Erica Ronahan, Laurette Wiggins, Irma Garcia Sinclair, Steve Lowe, and Ray Kidd.
Before we do the timing,
and John D.
okay, before we do timing, we have 2 more hours, and we have a lot of items. Is there another item that has a lot of speakers on it?
Item 7 has 3 speakers, and item 12 has 4 speakers. Other
Okay,
than that,
so we're
no.
fine. Okay, so in 2 minutes is, and if you can take less, we appreciate it, but you have your 2 minutes.
And please state your name for the record when you come to the
Okay.
podium.
I'm Wallace Murfitt. I'm with First Industrial Realty Trust, and I'm going to help you out of your time budget process by being very brief. We're delighted to be nominated on the short list. I'm joined here today by some of my team members, Jim Terry from Ware Malcolm, who is our architect, Eric Kissauer from Pankow Construction, who is our proposed general contractor, and Lynn Kriegsbaum from Creative Consulting. She's the former base transition coordinator, and she is our community relations person on our team. As I said, we're delighted to be nominated on the short list. We want to affirm our confidence in the project, and we look forward to receiving an RFP and working closely with the city in developing our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any way I can get this map that Alex had up on the screen?
I don't know.
They would either have to do it through the PowerPoint presentation,
Is the
but there's no
PowerPoint person
projection
here?
capabilities here.
Can you?
So she would have to find it in
Well,
her
why don't
PowerPoint.
you not speak next? See if she can get that, and then someone else can come forward so that we don't have to wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Aboudi. I'm with Oakland Maritime Support Services. We have the ENA for the East Gateway of the Army Base, 15 acres on the city side and 15 acres on the port side. We actually, right now, are on the West Gateway providing temporary parking infrastructure, AMS services to truckers to keep them out of West Oakland, and hoping to build the new facility across the street as soon as possible. We're in support of PCC getting their customs exam site on the East Gateway next to us, making sure that the whole East Gateway is truck related. We want to make sure that no other services get in there that would conflict with our uses, which is port infrastructure. And I compare our infrastructure as public infrastructure services. We provide to the port, the trucking, warehousing, customs exams. These are all services that you don't hear about unless
Excuse me,
something
somebody
happens,
leaned
unless
against
you need
the
them.
light. Thank you. Oh, someone did it again.
Yes. So it's a once in a lifetime chance to put the infrastructure for the trucking and support services on the East Gateway and build it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. She doesn't have it yet. If you want to speak, she won't have it. If you want to wait,
Yeah, no, I'll just speak.
okay, forget it.
My
Thank
name's
you.
Harry Mamazuka. I'm the president for Bay Area Kenworth. We're moving forward similar to OMSS and Bill Abudi, who just spoke, with our finalizing our proposal to become a resident on the Eastern Gateway of the Oakland Army Base. We're also in support of PCC Logistics and their customs inspection. We've spent countless hours working with OMSS, the Port of Oakland, the trucking industry, the community residents on a plan to create an efficient maritime ancillary support compound that's on that Eastern Gateway, not only to maximize the efficiency of goods movement in and out of the port, but also to minimize the impact trucking and truck-related services have.
1 second. Can we have K-Top put the computer on? Keep going, and it will get up there.
Okay. Just to minimize the impact that trucking and truck-related services have or activities have on the Oakland residents as well. PCC and the value that it brings as both a business operation, a related maritime support service, and as a trucking operation makes it perfect sense for it to be on the Eastern Gateway with us. Just to note, ancillary maritime services outlined in the blue as well as in the red on the Eastern Gateway on the lower right half. That's OMSS. We're that little section that's cropped out on against Interstate 880. And then it kind of makes that a little bit of
Here, I'll go there.
now, the situation of where we're going to be is kind of being discussed right now, but it makes perfect sense to have PCC Logistics right in that mix on that Eastern Gateway, because then we're all related ancillary support services for trucking and trucking-related activity, making it highly efficient and feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for getting this up on the.
We can just leave that up. My name is Abdel Zaharan. I'm the CFO of PCC Logistics. Our company is an
K-Top, they wanted it left up.
Yeah, could you please put it
I'm
back?
sorry, they didn't hear you. K-Top, leave the computer up. Go ahead.
What we're here to do is ask for that piece of land that's right next to, in between BAK, Bay Area Kenworth, and OMSS. That sliver right there. We are an Oakland-based company. We're in a warehouse and trucking business. We feel that we're a homegrown success story. We've been in business over 20 years. Our company's labor workforce and management team is a true representation of Oakland's diversity, and we're very proud of that. We provide support to the local economy. We deal with 50-plus vendors. We provide well-paying union jobs. We have over 300 employees here in Oakland. We provide a service to the national security. We are the customs, we handle the high security cargo for U.S. Customs. We handle those high-risk containers that come out of the port for examination. If our business mix is such that we must stay in the port area, I don't think anybody here wants to see these high-risk containers coming down these major freeway arteries or coming through downtown Oakland. We've been providing this service for 7 years for the customs, for the homeland part of it. And again, our business mix is such that we must remain in that area. We have a working relationship with OMSS, BAK, and that would make sense to be in that area. That's what we can't understand, the staff's recommendation that we should move elsewhere out of the city and handle that type of business, and or they're suggesting there's some property from the port. Please point to it. We're not aware of it. We ask that you reconsider and allow PCC to continue its business operation and recommend a carve-out like you've done for BAK and OMSS. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. And K-Top, you can take the computer. Oh, leave it up. You know, if it leaves up, they don't get to see you. So you need to tell me when you come what you want.
My name is Dexter Vizanal. I'm the president of the Maritime Industrial Support Compound, and we are a group of businesses on the Oakland Army base and in West Oakland that are in maritime-related businesses. And we have been advocating for the Eastern Gateway to go towards ancillary maritime services, which the council and this committee agreed should happen, is that the entire Eastern Gateway should go towards port-related services and trucking-related services. Bay Area Kenworth has their piece, which is the notch up there. OMSS has their piece right there. PCC Logistics, which is currently housed on the Oakland Army base, in that last piece right there, and are a tenant of the city of Oakland. They get an invoice from the city of Oakland every month. They pay their bill. They pay it on time. They employ over 300 people on the Oakland Army base, and they are in ancillary maritime services, which this committee and the city council said the Eastern Gateway should be in. They also provide national security. They are the Customs Inspection House. Recently, in the news, there was a bust that happened, and it happened with their partnership with Customs. $22 million in counterfeit goods was seized at their location. They intercept drugs, toxins, poisonous materials, anything that is high risk goes to them. To say that we may not necessarily want those services in Oakland is like saying at the airport, you don't want to have scanners, you don't want to have screeners, you don't want to have dogs, but you want to have an airport. You can't have an airport without security, and you can't have a port without security. And that's the services that they provide. Their business is being threatened to be displaced because they haven't been recommended like the produce guys. He's ceding my time.
Who's ceding your time?
Michael McDonald.
Thank you.
They are they're currently being threatened to being displaced. They have not been recommended to be included in the master RFP, and it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand why. They've made a recommendation to have the produce guys and the film business all should be retained in Oakland, but to not recommend that PCC Logistics, a company that's already here, that's already employing people, it doesn't make sense. The city's forcing them to issue 300 pink slips. I mean, is that what you want? And they're already there, and they're a tenant, and they support the port. And it's also trucking-related business. Bay Area Kenworth is trucking, OMSS is trucking, PCC Logistics is trucking. If we want to be efficient and we want to have a positive impact on the community, to get the trucks in a central location so they don't have a negative impact on West Oakland, they should all be in a centralized area. To move PCC Logistics somewhere else is also say that you want trucks someplace else. So if you want it to be efficient and you want it to be green, you should do a carve out, and you should make the recommendation that you do a carve out and you let OMSS, Bay Area Kenworth, and PCC develop the entire Eastern Gateway, which we've proposed all along, and let the master developer have everything else on the other side of Maritime. They have the capacity, they have the ability, they've proven themselves. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. This is what you need to do.
You know what? Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Okay, thank you. Next speaker. Okay, next speaker.
You can remove the map at this point.
Would you please remove the map? Thank you.
I don't want any distractions. Thank you. Thank you, Dex. My name is Reverend Michael Wallace, and I'm here with respect to the proposal in the Oakland redevelopment staff recommendation of the 4 individuals or companies that have been placed on the short list. I'm in complete opposition to that in the fact that there was other proposals that I thought that was much more feasible, that was much more beneficial to the West Oakland community, and that had a lot more community input. Number one, I'm more in support of the Oakland Bay Partners, who basically had a proposal that did not make the short list. And I have a real concern with that due to the fact that it was one of the very few proposals that was self-sufficient with respect to its financial capabilities, and that it did not need any subsidies from the city of Oakland, and that it would not have to tap into our taxpayers' revenue or dollars to make this program, this product and development come online. Number two, it was the only proposal that had the shortest time period in which a portion of it could be up and running, providing needed jobs to the West Oakland community and the city of Oakland at large. It was the only proposal that had named anchor tenants that was willing to come in, such as Costco, Lowe's, and other major anchor tenants to bring in needed employment to the city of Oakland. And I just find it quite appalling that they did not make the short list when I look at all the proposals, how comprehensive theirs were, how they went a step beyond even the requests from the city, and yet and still they did not make the short list. I find that somewhat disturbing, and so I'd like us to reconsider and allow them to be considered on the short list proposed to the city office for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Nevlin, a member of WOCAG. Also, I work security. Very important in West Oakland and at the West Oakland Army Base to have security as part of the development, because you're going to have to attract people from out of the area, and there's an awful lot of publicity that doesn't draw people into the area. One thing that would bring people into the area is a leading edge of public transit, and that wasn't in any of the proposals. One of the second disturbing things is that the WOCAG, in all of the things that were spelled out on things that had to be done, there was no mention of presentations to WOCAG or community input or things like that as part of the process. That was one thing that I found upsetting that should have been mentioned in there. And lastly, the idea of a vision. I have a vision when I first heard of Bay Area Kenworth moving into the area. There are auto malls all over the East Bay and around the country. But with the trucking that goes on at the Port of Oakland and Bay Area Kenworth, why not establish a unique operation in Oakland, a truck mall, where the various manufacturers showcase the best and the newest trucks from around the world? That I believe that all of the manufacturers that are already online to move in there have trucks that they sell. I think that kind of a vision of a truck mall deserves serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Aidan Barry, representing Prologis and Catalyst, based here in Oakland. In the spirit of brevity, we support the staff report. We support the opportunity to participate in this project. We feel the work of the committee and staff was excellent and was very thoughtful. So we appreciate the opportunity with the one component of which is addressed in the staff report, as much detail as can exist in the RFP, so that we can address kind of the financial opportunities as well as the community needs, would greatly be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sharon Cornu, Alameda Labor Council. I want to repeat some of the comments very briefly that we made at the time of the RFQ in support of logistics, labor peace, and local hire in the RFP as it moves forward. I believe we've had productive discussions with a number of organizations around the opportunity to create good jobs that are accessible to Oakland residents, with a focus on logistics, and that the partnerships exist and the willingness exists to bring that to fruition. Just quickly, and I'm sure you'll have a chance to ask staff this in more detail and get stronger answers, I think I'm hearing two misconceptions arising around the staff report. The notion that a company is forced off of the Army base, I don't believe is accurate, and I don't believe that the review panel examined in great detail the pro formas or financial documents, because they were not finished proposals at that time. It was a request for qualifications. So I wanted to ask that you work to help set that record straight in terms of some of the prior comments made. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shibneez Manji, and I'm with the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy. eBase is a nonprofit organization working to build power and raise standards for working families in the East Bay. Representing labor and the community, we think that the Oakland Army Base is a significant opportunity for Oakland's residents and economy. The city will never have such a large piece of land, public land, to develop. We know that there are lots of ways that the Oakland Army Base can be redeveloped, and we think that the way to maximize the benefits of the redevelopment for Oakland's families is for the city to rebuild the Oakland Army Base in a way that puts Oaklanders into good paying jobs. A few weeks ago, we co-released a national report on military base reuse. We found that most military base redevelopment efforts fail to create sufficient family sustaining jobs and address poverty and critical community benefits. When the Oakland Army Base closed, the city lost 1,800 military and civilian jobs, as well as a thriving center. Today, Oakland can learn from other cities and avoid pitfalls that they encountered by establishing standards for the redevelopment of the Oakland Army Base. As the city is deciding on choosing the master developer for the Oakland Army Base, we highly encourage council to prioritize living wage jobs, labor peace, and job training for Oakland residents. The city has already taken such steps in the RFQ released earlier this year. Lastly, we'd like to congratulate the staff and review committee for their work in reviewing the proposals. We support the staff's recommendation of releasing the RFP to these 4 qualified developers. We also support the review panel's recommendations to include local hire, labor peace standards in the RFP as they were in the RFQ. And since the Oakland Army Base is public land, the city has the opportunity to set these kinds of standards and ensure that Oakland residents are hired into construction and permanent jobs at the base. We encourage you to direct staff to issue an RFP to these 4 developers and support the recommendations put forth by the City Council around local hire, labor peace, and job training. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dwayne Wiggins. I represent Oakland community as a whole. I'm a West Oakland tenant. I'm a West Oakland resident. I have recently heard about the RFQ and a lot of things that are possible going on the Army base. I'm really kind of interested in seeing some things happen in Oakland that can create jobs, that can bring revenues here. So I've heard about a proposal that I didn't see make the short list, and I was really confused because I saw a lot of things on there that I know that Oakland can use at this time. It was the Oakland Bay Partners, and they were talking about the film division. They were talking about retail. I've been hearing about logistics, and I've been hearing about customs, and I'm sure that's very important and crucial in Oakland itself. But Oakland right now needs the opportunity to move forward. People need jobs, and they need them right away. I've been hearing about certain proposals that have a turnaround period of 15 years. This one proposal struck my interest simply because it talked about a turnaround period of 2 years. It talked about it being funded, self-funded, and it didn't take any money out of Oakland. It brought money to Oakland. It brought revenue, and it brought jobs. I'd like for their proposal to be seriously considered, and I'd like the people to have the opportunity to look at this and see if it's something we would consider to happen here. Everything else, I can see these jobs happening. We need entry-level jobs. We need things that will increase the peace on the streets out here in Oakland. It's really bad for people, and without opportunities and without things like this coming in West Oakland, I just see it's not going to work in our favor at all. Thank you very much, and that's my voice.
Hi, my name is Guy Green, and I'm a West Oakland resident. I just wanted clarification on how the 4 were choosing for the RFQs. I just really felt like one proposal really stood out. They did a lot of outreach into the West Oakland community itself and asked the people questions. I live in West Oakland, and so I walk through West Oakland and I talk to people all day, and people are really in favor of, a lot of people are in favor of retail. As a matter of fact, I myself personally have not talked to anyone in my community who is not in favor of retail. Not one person have I talked to. And so that was really a concern of mine. Also that I was reading the paper today, and I guess Ms. Bruna made a comment about companies, what was going on in the West Oakland Army Base, and that it was going to take around 8 years for these people to get up and running. And if they did take 8 years, she didn't know it was going to be conducive to 8 years from now. And so with a proposal coming in that's saying they'll be up and ready in 2 years, for my community, that's something that we really look forward to, because people need work right now, and that's right now as compared to 8 years. I say that economics and economic stability brings on other things. It brings on better school grades, it brings less crime, it brings better health in a community. And so I'm really wondering why, I'm wondering how they came upon making their decisions for the 4, and why a much stronger proposal wasn't considered. Just want to make sure I cover everything here. And the fact that they're generating so many jobs, the fact that they're generating jobs that are that work for people in West Oakland and in Oakland. And people, where's the outfit? Can I have your 2 minutes? And
Do you have that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so, and why aren't they looking at retail more? Have they gone out into the community? And when you make this decision, are you considering the residents of the community and what they really need and what needs to be put forth for them? So it's really, it's kind of personal for me, because I live in West Oakland, and I don't want people coming into West Oakland to make money and then taking the money out of West Oakland. We've been talking about retail for so long. These people that came in and did this RFQ are not asking for money. They even offered money to West Oakland for training and placement. And so, I'm not seeing it, and I just wanted clarification on that, and I was hoping someone can give that to me.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shirley Burnell, not Boomnell, but Burnell. I am a resident of West Oakland and also a member of Oakland Acorn. And I'm just here to say, first of all, I think from the survey that we did, people want to see a spot for the trucks, most definitely, so that they can have some place to park and not be on the streets of West Oakland. But you're talking about retail. We want retail jobs in here that are paying. We don't want jobs that are paying $6.50, $7 an hour. If they're going to be jobs, we need good jobs in this community. And we want them to be for West Oakland residents, first and foremost, before you go out and start bringing people in from other places. But also, I'm concerned because we talk about our kids being in the street and the crime. I have not heard anything about anything going into this new area for the kids in our communities. We need a skating rink for the kids to get off the street. We need maybe a theater. We need maybe a library down there. Something for the kids to do. I have heard absolutely nothing concerning the kids here in West Oakland. And I know once upon a time there was a bowling alley and a movie theater and a grocery store at the Army base. There's plenty of land down there. I don't know why we can't start considering our kids when we're talking about this. The jobs are all good, but we still need to do something about our kids. Otherwise, we're going to still be in a lot of trouble. And we want the jobs down there, and we want good jobs down there. But we also want to make sure that you get a spot for the trucks so you can get them off the streets of West Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, your time is up.
Oh, I just wanted to say
No.
that I was supporting Oakland Bay Partners, and I just wanted to make that clear.
Oh, I think that was. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Felix Guillory, and I represent the TriMet Development Group. Only one local developer chosen out of the 4 selected. Local development has been excluded. The initial rules were changed. Oakland suffers. What message does this send to the citizens of Oakland that we do not have the talent to begin to solve the problems of our city? Including logistics into the proposal was initially TriMet's concept. It became publicly known to other bidders that our team had a large concern with a logistic requirement that would be the initial phase of our development, so that they hitchhiked on and everybody else incorporated the logistics concept. Developing a project to spec, developing a project to spec which of the selected teams have the passion that Oakland needs to convince growth markets to come to Oakland. Oakland has gone through this before. Civic Center sat vacant for 25 years before occupancy occurred. That is what we can expect from the teams that have been selected, because there is no ownership and no loyalty to the citizens of Oakland. We will hear all the excuses from the developers when these projects sit vacant. Oakland is a terrible place to live. Our proposal projected over 10,000 new life-sustaining jobs. No other proposal came close to our projections. Our proposal committed jobs to the citizens of Oakland. No other proposal committed jobs to the citizens of Oakland. Our team of local residents submitted an iconic proposal that incorporates a design to attract industry to Oakland and development which would have a vantage point from throughout the Bay Area, in particular as you come off the San Francisco Bay Bridge. A development that will reach the current and future growth industries, green, biotech, and high-tech. The citizens of Oakland deserve a development that reflects them, a development that selects above, beyond politics, a team with passion for politics in Oakland.
Guillory.
Thank you.
Unless someone succeeds.
Just a second. I'll be through in just a second.
No, Mr. Guillory.
We ask that
Mr. Guillory, your time is up. All right.
Thank you very much. The citizens of Oakland deserve a development team that reflects them, a team selected above and beyond politics, a team with passion that overcomes profit, a team the citizens of Oakland can have pride in. West Oakland and the citizens of Oakland ask you to direct staff to correct this error and put TriMet Development back on the list of competing developers. Your action will put pride back into the city of Oakland. We are asking you to allow TriMet Development to compete for this contract. Thank you for correcting this gross error. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, distinguished council, and everyone here, Oakland residents. Happy to be here. Thank you. My name is Xavier Gardner. I am the founder, CEO, and visioneer of Tri-Mid Galaxies Incorporated, California's, from what I understand, first tithing corporation. My concern has been not just for this project, but for the residents of Oakland, the citizens of Oakland. Our concerns have always been to meet the needs that were here for our people. I am an Oakland booster. If it's not about Oakland first, it's not about Oakland talent first, I really couldn't see us being involved to do such a project at this time. Mr. Guillory has worked very long and hard with us, as well, sure as Fawn Steiner from VBN Architects and a number of people here in Oakland. We are truly dedicated to using Oakland-based businesses, supporting the educational components. I heard something mentioned about theater, retail. All of these things were encompassed and are encompassed in the Tri-Mid Galaxies development proposal, known as Solar City. We had concerns about Kenworth. Kenworth, we have you in there too. PCC, we have you in there too. This was an all-encompassing design. It was set to utilize all of the talent and create 10,000 new full-time jobs at the same time. Not just livable wage, but acceptable wage. The only way to get the crime out of the streets, to get the kids back involved, is to give them opportunities and to provide funds to the nonprofits, the ecumenical community, and the residents at large. The city is going to benefit largely from this. That's all I really want to say. I just hope that you will take us back in and allow us to compete in the RFP. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is John Behrens from the Oakland Film Center. I cede my time to Sean House.
My name is David Hakim. I'm the Chair Emeritus of the Directors Guild of America's Coordinating Committee for San Francisco, and I cede my time to Sean House.
Hi, I'm Sean House.
I was wondering.
Could I get the map back up there for a moment, please?
K-Top, can you put the map back up?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Sean House, and I am a resident and have been a member of the Mayor's Task Force on Film and Television, and currently co-chair of the Oakland Partnership Arts Cluster. I am here today as a spokesperson for the Oakland Film Center, and that's that little area that has the cutout and the thing all the way in the East Gateway area that everybody else is vying for. We've been there for 2 years and have over 65 employees currently. The Oakland Film Center business owners wish to thank you for your support and commitment that you and the mayor's office have shown us over the last 4 years. We wish now to give back to the city 100-fold through our proposal. You can remove the map. I don't need it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I first wish to refute and lay to rest a rumor that has been circulating about the halls of Oakland city government. The rumor that is if the development of a new Oakland Film Center moves forward, it would need city subsidies. I wish to state emphatically for the record that this rumor is patently false. We need no subsidies. This rumor has been strengthened by an error in the staff report before you now. In attachment E, page 31, section B, it states that currently the group gets a subsidized rent at the base. The word subsidized suggests that the city of Oakland contributes money to enable us to stay there. This is also patently false. We do pay below market value on the property we lease, but there is not a tenant on the base that pays full market value. The reason for this is that these are short-term leases that do not allow business owners to amortize rent costs over a longer period of time. Additionally, the film center leases are an as-is lease, and they force us to carry 100% liability on unimproved buildings. We're fine with that. There is also the matter that states we are asking for 22 acres to develop. We realized early on that that amount of land was unnecessary for us. We corrected that statement from our original proposal in the interview process. Apparently, it still made it into staff recommendations. We need no more than 10 acres currently. Council members, I would like to focus on our proposal before you now. Ours is a market-based proposal with built-in jobs. If allowed to improve and expand on what we have already created, this will create even more jobs and revenue for the city. We are already doing, and have been doing for the past 4 years, what everyone else in this process is proposing to do. This is not a pie-in-the-sky proposal. We have already created and are ready to expand a job training program targeting disadvantaged Oakland residents who wish to get into the film and television industry. These are vocationally trained, good-paying jobs, most of them union. The average jobs in the production industry pay approximately $74,000 a year. This is about $13,000 more than the average salaries across all industries in San Francisco, let alone Oakland. We have stated to council before, this is an incredible opportunity for the citizens and city of Oakland. It is indeed an Oakland-focused project. It already has created a hub for film and television industries in the Bay Area, as evidenced by numerous write-ups in newspapers, business journals, and magazines. In early June of this year, Governor Schwarzenegger announced that it was time to incorporate film incentives for the state of California. In mid-June, our own Senator Pro Tem Don Parada reversed his 3-year stand and announced that he would support film incentive legislation. This incentive would not be applicable to the LA Basin area. Therefore, the industry would move abroad in California. Where would they go? To places that already have infrastructure. Council members, in a time of economic downturn when jobless rates in the East Bay are soaring and industries are cutting jobs and spending, the city must look for ways to increase revenue. It states in the report that there is no port support listed in our proposal. It was our understanding that this proposal process was to benefit the city of Oakland, not the city of the Port of Oakland. Even the port is cutting back 10% of its employees and is cutting spending on capital improvements by $330.3 million over the next 5 years. We are offering an industry that is expanding. We ask that you direct, not suggest, that the 4 chosen developers include us in their RFPs. We do not wish to be displaced, as we have had 2 business moves in less than 4 years. Council members, we're asking for you to help us help you, and in turn benefit the citizens and city of Oakland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erica Ranahan with Ranahan Production Services. We thank you very much for your consideration of our proposal to remain on and build a green state-of-the-art film and media center on the Gateway project. This project will bring a thriving industry to Oakland, the Bay Area, and all of Northern California. San Jose and Santa Clara are known worldwide for being a high-tech center. San Francisco is known for tourism. What is Oakland known for? The Oakland Film and Media Center offers Oakland the re-emerging film and media industry, which in turn offers high-paying jobs, industry-based training programs, and provides a boost to the local economy. Film and media is beginning to put Oakland on the national and international film scene. Media is power. Look at Los Angeles and New York, for examples. The OFMC centralizes Northern California's film and media industry, making Oakland the hub city. Once Oakland establishes this film and media hub, we will market it to the entire country and the international film community. The Oakland Film and Media Center offers industry training and job placement programs for ethnically diverse and economically disadvantaged young adults throughout West Oakland and beyond. This will give them a chance at the American dream, affording them the potential to be homeowners and raise a family here in Oakland, which in turn will contribute to the positive growth of our community. Emerging industries are the future of Oakland. Current industries have not lifted Oakland to its potential. Film and media, alternative energy, and environmental industries will be on the forefront of that growth. Embracing these industries is a must for Oakland if it is to move in a more positive cultural, social, and economic direction. Please give Oakland a chance and mandate whomever you choose as master developer to include the Oakland Film and Media Center in the redevelopment of the Army base. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm David Mack of Meridian Films at the Oakland Film Center, and I'm ceding my time to Ben Nichols. I'm Ben Nichols. I'm part of the Oakland Film Center. I'm a homeowner, and a business owner who's proud to live and operate in the city of Oakland. My son is a kindergartner at Peralta Elementary School, and I live in the Temescal district. I come before you to thank you for the support that you've shown the Oakland Film Center in the past, and I ask that you continue and hopefully expand that support as we move into the RFP phase. For 20 years, I've worked in the film business in the Bay Area. I've worked on some of the most successful films ever created: Matrix, Star Wars, Pirates of the Caribbean, Indiana Jones, on and on. All this work was done here in the Bay Area. I'm part of a specialized industry that spends millions of dollars annually in the Bay Area. Lucasfilms, Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, they've all poured millions into the local economy. 4 years ago, my fellow film workers and I became the beneficiaries of the vision and energy of the Oakland Film Office under the guidance of Amy Zins and Janet Austin. It was through their efforts that a group of over 20 individual film businesses were able to find a home on the former Oakland Army base. To my knowledge, there's simply nothing else like it in the industry. It's a single location with multiple overlapping and sometimes rival businesses that operate out of the same lot. The Oakland Film Center is, as we speak, building a national reputation while being an amazing public relations asset, albeit untapped, for the city of Oakland. Here's an operation that's thriving in the face of a stagnant economy and which has the potential to set Oakland apart from every other city in the United States. In Cecily Burton's article from the Trib this morning, she reiterated what CETA's recent report stated, that the developers will be asked to incorporate the film center in their responses. We as business owners need to know that this directive is being heard by the council, because in case you didn't know it, we're already there and we've been up and running for more than 3 years. I've run 4 feature films, numerous commercials, and I've got a huge set right now for the largest Filipino network on the planet, and I've run them all out of the Oakland Film Center. What we as the Oakland Film Center would ask of the council and CETA is that as this process moves forward, you adhere to the original intent of the base redevelopment criteria, in which it was specifically stated that at 2 different points that a film element be included in any plans for the redevelopment. We further ask that the council take careful consideration of the specific language of CETA's own response to the first round of the RFQ, in which it specifically states on the bottom of page 10 in the staff report PDF that the chosen developer include the film center as part of their plans. As an Oakland business owner and a member of the Oakland Film Center, I need to know that my company has a home. Our lease is only through January 2009. That's 7 months away, and that makes it extremely stressful and difficult to make long-term plans. I'm currently bidding on film projects that would carry way past that date, and I need to know in concrete terms that the city of Oakland wants us here and will continue to allow us to stay in our current location. The process of redeveloping the site is going to take years. In the Trib, Councilperson Bruner, you were quoted as saying it could take up to 8 years. And what we ask is that while the chosen developer constructs a permanent home for us, that we be allowed to stay in our current location and that we be granted a 3-year lease at minimum. We'd prefer a 5. We're not asking for anything special. What we are asking is that we be allowed to find a fair and stable footing to build our future in Oakland. Please grant us a solid base on which to build, and will in turn give Oakland something to be proud of. We'll grow our business, create a unique and globally recognized film industry hub. Members of the council, you have the unprecedented chance to place Oakland in the spotlight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra King, and I'd like to concede my time to Reverend Wallace, please.
Have you spoken
He
already?
spoke already on
I
this
have
item.
spoken, but she wanted me to
No.
address her issues. Would you like her to bring it forth? She
Yeah.
can speak for herself then.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Don't worry.
And your name
again,
my name is Sandra King, and you know I'm nobody, unlike most of the people in this room. But I would just like to say that I would like to think that I live in a world-class city. And I know that it's been tried several other times, but I feel like we're at a point in history where we have a chance to make something spectacular out of this. And there's an opportunity. We can make it another industrial park, or we could make it something with a beautiful view of the city, eventually build a hotel where people would come and want to come to Oakland, make it a destination point. And I really don't understand why. The first thing I want to know is, what is someone bringing to this city? What are they bringing to the project? What are their plans? What is the money that they're bringing? We don't have the money, you know, to pay out for other people. And I think there's a lot of people that do have plans, and I want to see someone. I love the idea of a studio. I think that's something to bring world class to this city. Music and film, I'd like to see. I have a lot of family that's in the business, so I probably have interest in that. But I don't understand why they are not looking at some of the projects that have all the money, have all the projects planned out, and I'm just confused about this. I you know, maybe you guys know better than I do. As I say, I'm nobody, but I'm very confused.
Thank you. Very articulate.
Steve Lowe. Again, I'm a vice president of the West Oakland Commerce Association, and our board is firmly in support, unanimously in support, I should say, of the Pacific Coast Container and their needs on the port. We believe it's essential. It's obvious that the Army base isn't big enough to do all the things, embrace all the hopes and dreams of everybody in this room. And the only way that we can make it work is to be as efficient as possible with the tenants that are there and the tenants that will be coming. That super efficiency is what we tried to put together when we first began to imagine what the Maritime Industrial Support Compound, would be. And PCC was an essential part of that. And we've been working for 4 years now, trying to bring a group together that could interact with one another so that trucks from one area could park on the lots of the others when they weren't being used. And that's what we would like to see on the base most of all. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. My name is Ray Kidd. I'm with the WOCAG. I just wanted to say I'm pleased with the staff report. I think it came out fairly well. A couple of points I'd just like to emphasize again. I believe that the idea of hiring and training Oakland residents, I really support that. I think that's a very necessary inclusionary thing to include. Also, the idea of opportunities for local small businesses is also very necessary to have in there. I think that the idea that that retail has to go out there is not. I don't believe that's really necessary. I think that there's if the Army base was used primarily for trade and logistics and ancillary maritime support services, things like what I was talking about, all the trucking issues that were the trucking areas that are in West Oakland, if they could be moved there, if the major recycling operations on Mandela and Peralta could be moved there, this would free up large tracts of land on Mandela and Peralta that flow directly out of Emeryville from the major retail centers in Emeryville into Oakland. It's a much more appropriate place for retail, and I think a much more likely successful place for retail. Well, let me say also that a lot of these things that we're talking about moving to the Army base are basically helping the port. They're supporting the port, and we all know that the port has to succeed, and we want it to succeed as well, and it helps the neighborhoods as well. I think, going back to the point I made before, if the city needs to explore swapping some of its land to the port on the Army base land, for other port properties, which might be more appropriate for retail, for film, for recycling. I mean, even areas that around the airport or elsewhere. And I think that this would free up land that could be used more productively and for a higher, better use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Ellen Warwick
Ellen,
Parkinson.
will you bring it down further?
A little bit more? Okay, thank you. And I support the staff report, that I do feel that there should be an RFP for the Gateway development. And I also feel this way. I can remember when we had our first meeting that Mr. Chuck Foster came to the meeting, and he said at the meeting, he says, I'm here to ask for the entire Army base. I still agree with Mr. Foster that if we cannot develop the Army base within 2 or 3 years, we should forget it, because we're losing money. It's out there growing grass and doing everything. I work with the RAB to help clean up the Army base. We didn't clean it up. We have cleaned it up. So we wasted a lot of money on that. And so my thing is that we have all this land that's out there, and we have very little use of it. We aren't making any money. The port is supposed to be in trouble. So if we're not going to develop it, why are we holding on to it? Let the port have it and let them expand and help support the city of Oakland. The city of Oakland is supposed to be in bad shape. I don't badmouth Oakland because I live here. I think it's a wonderful city. I love it. And the thing about it is, we cannot make the Army base a place of a destination that people from all over the world will want to come and see the Army base. And if we can't do that, I don't know what we're holding on to it. If the port can do it, let them do it. Let somebody do it anyway, because we're just holding on land and not making any revenue for this city. Again, I do support the staff report that we should have an RFP for the Gateway development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Bruner, members of the committee, I'm Phil Tagami with California Capital Group, representing the AMB CCG team. We're appreciative of the time the volunteers put on the panel, and we are asking for your consideration in support of the staff report. I was born and raised in Oakland. I live in Oakland. My business is currently located here in Oakland, and have been very active and involved in this community. So to set the record straight from an earlier speaker, I think a number of us share that designation. I think there have been a number of speakers who have discussed conflicting uses. I think a lot of that can be resolved. The task that's been set forth is a mighty task, but it is an achievable one, and it needs to be rooted in a very practical approach, understanding the regulatory steps required to unlock vertical development. So the first thing we need to focus on is the infrastructure and the timeline to not only identify the funding of the infrastructure, but the shared infrastructure between the port pieces, both the berths 20 through 24, as well as the Army base portion of the port acquired and was planning for rail use, as well as the Central Gateway, Eastern Gateway, and the future developed and delivered pieces of the Spit and the Mole that Caltrans will release in 2015. Again, I think it requires a great deal of alignment. I think that between the port and the city and the state of California and MTC and our California delegation, we need to align our goals and objectives to make sure that we're consistent with our opportunities to maximize Oakland's position for MAP 21, which in essence is the moving us ahead for progress for the 21st century, the new name for the Transportation Equity Act of 2009, which is a 6-year funding cycle. The federal government's moving away from 108 separate highway, transit, railroad, and safety funding categories to 10 principles that will be used to determine that funding. The state is in the process of adopting 7 that it will use, and I think the city should align itself and adopt a very similar standard. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I'm sorry, he was just handing in.
Oh, sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm president of M. Johnson Interests. We are a joint venture development partner with Federal Development Company. Our proposal, which was submitted under Federal Oakland Associates, is a 50-50 joint venture between Federal Development and our company. We are a local minority-owned development company. I myself am a resident of Oakland, and for several years we had our office within blocks of the Oakland Army base, so we're very familiar with the conditions around there and have looked at the potential for this for many years. I want to commend the panel for the work that they put in, which was a very arduous task to evaluate all 13 proposals. We're pleased that our team is going on to the next round, and I hope you support the recommendation of the staff. I do want to point out that our team has a broad base of participation and a lot of diversity, including many Oakland businesses who work with the city and who understand all of the objectives which many of the people who spoke here today have discussed. And we believe that our efforts to outreach within the West Oakland community have been important, but we also believe that this is a project that is important to the entire city. And in the next round of the RFP, we will bring forth even more details to highlight the impact that we think this project can have not only on West Oakland, but for the entire city. And in that regard, our proposal did include big box and outlet retail, which we think has a very viable option for this site. In particular, these are uses that were highlighted in the market study that was a part of the RFP, and we believe that the next RFP stage should not limit the potential uses, because we think that these retail uses have a significant amount of potential for tax revenue and job creation. So I want to thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Irma Garcia Sinclair. I am a 30-year member of Screen Actors Guild and AFTRA, AFL-CIO affiliate, and a founding member of the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, which is part of the National Council of Raza. And I wanted to recommend that you reconsider Triamid Galaxies. I feel that Triamid Galaxies and Solar City is the most inclusive proposal with a world-class green, sustainable development and a wonderful architecture design. It also includes 10,000 jobs, well-paying jobs, youth programming, and film and media education. And it's the only one that I have seen that it's also including Cybertran International, which is a solar ultra light rail elevated system as a solution to the transportation, and connecting West Oakland BART to the Army base. It also includes top of the line hotels, and anyhow, it would just be something that Oakland City could be really proud of, and it includes, like I said, everyone that's spoken here, I feel. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Guessman, and I represent M&L Commodities, Inland Cold Storage, and Controlled Environments Construction. We made a proposal to the city, we were one of the 13, that talked about developing a cold storage facility or a warehouser for food. And what I've learned here today is that there seems to be an extended timeline for this project. And what we tried to make clear when we made our proposal is our timeline is right now. If we had a building permit, we would stick a shovel in the ground tomorrow afternoon. Okay? I can provide 120 jobs with this facility right now. These are high-paying jobs. These are family-sustaining jobs, and it supports everything we believe that was in the RFQ. The RFQ asks for a commitment to green. We're going to self-generate our own power on site using fuel cell, natural gas to fuel cell technology, which basically has no pollution whatsoever. We're going to be off the grid 95% of the time. It asks us to provide port facility synergies with the port. The export and import of food products is one of the growing industries in this country, and it's going to continue to grow. We provide food not only for national and international transactions, but for local transactions. The ports in California are overcrowded. They don't have the ability to expand, and we're paying more day to day for food products simply because we don't have a way to get them in. And in the current economy, exports are a huge plus for this country and for California and for this local area. So we believe that we should be included because we only need 5 acres, 5 to 10 small acres, and we can start now. And we appreciate the time you've given us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Loretta Wiggins, and I'm an Oakland resident, and I also support everything that Dwayne Wiggins said. In addition to that, I want to speak on behalf of the Oakland Bay Partners. I want to state that the Oakland Bay Partners is not asking for any money from the citizens of Oakland. It has been given financing, and the retail component is ready for jobs within 2 years, which is a short time. Also, I want to request that you add it to the short list, and also let the citizens of Oakland know that Costco, Lowe's, and Target has over 200,000 square feet space that's ready and funded to go. So please reconsider for Oakland Bay Partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm Sanjeev Handa, East Bay News Service. When the city of Oakland first started talking about the reuse of the Army base, Admiral Tony was still the CEO of the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce. There was a young planner named Barry Cromartie that was hired by then Mayor Elihu Harris to start the planning process. And at community meetings, many of the activists had children that were toddlers or in preschool. Most of those children now graduated college this past couple of weeks, and the rest are in college. That's how long this process has gone on. Let me point out several things. There are many others who want a piece of the pie. AC Transit is floating the idea that because Emeryville wants to get rid of the bus yard that is in Emeryville, so that they can redevelop that into more housing or office space, that AC Transit will get a bigger portion or bigger chunk of land at the Army base so that they can put in a hydrogen fueling station, other kinds of things. I don't think that's gone through WCAG. I don't think that's come to the Oakland City Council, but it was mentioned 2 months ago at the Alameda County Congestion Management Agency meeting when there were no City of Oakland representatives at the table, but it was mentioned by an AC Transit representative. There are a number of other issues that come up. I did want to point out that this set of letters that was handed out by Mr. Tagami from all the various unions follows a pattern, and that is that unions are interested in immediate job creation and in paying the workers. That does not translate into long-term benefits for Oakland. If you read the letters, and I just had a quick chance to look at them, much of the wording is the same. It's boilerplate language, and it's designed to engender support for one particular group. And whatever the relationships may be is fine. But given that 16 years plus have elapsed, a few more months is not going to make any difference in terms of what happens. What will make a difference in terms of a few months delay is you will have a better idea within a few days. In fact, Thursday this week, the Port Audit Budget and Finance Committee will disclose the full depth of the immediate cuts at the port. Mr. House referred to some of those, but there are things like 20% of the seat capacity at Oakland International Airport is gone. That will have an impact on the region. And there are many other things that are not yet on the table that I wish you would definitely ask in just closing to get that information before you make any kind of a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I'm Bill Smith. I've been doing a couple thousand meetings on the military base conversion process in Alameda. And I was speaking to a professor about a year ago, and he wouldn't let me go for about an hour. And I just received a document that they were trying to get released, and the person who is the funding for their projects in the major universities realized the potential to do an 8.5 building standard rather than a 7.4, which is 110 times larger earthquake. Now, there's a lot of development happening in Oakland and Alameda. I've been doing Alameda all along for about 18 years here, and so I'm very well apprised. I've been going to all the different contractors who have been doing everything that gets done and being in the reuse committee process. And so I'm looking to change the process to bring things more up to date. Now, only in the last month I've been handed this document. It's about 190 pages. I need to cover it and be able to put it out to my people here, our local contractors, and they have like roofers that are getting older, and they need to be able to do the construction industry differently. I've been going to all the construction shows and looking to reuse things. I was able to get the reuse legislation for the people that are recycling, and you could reuse the base intact, and you could always put it back to its original purposes. Now, any waterfront property needs to have a higher building standard. And if you're going to use the buildings, we had Helen Sauce, who did the planning with San Francisco, as our base reuse advisory group in Alameda for hundreds and hundreds of meetings. And she had said that she wouldn't go in these big buildings, these hangars we have over there. And this material I'm dealing with now goes up to 6 floors. We have a building 5, which is 1 million square feet. And I'm looking to put half of it to use and barter to bulk up the buildings. It's in our documentation to do our base properly. So it's all landfill property, and we need to be able to have it so it'll stay together. Where I'm at in Alameda, there's a little hill, and there's all these big, huge trees. It's the end of the Gold Coast. So I'm just letting you know that you need to be able to do things right. It's only a few % more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all the speakers? Okay. I assume everyone who signed up and name's called is spoken.
You gonna go ahead? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation. I want to appreciate all the speakers that turned out. I mean, there are a couple of developers that I felt that should be on the short list that are not, but I certainly understand the process of reducing from 13 down to 4, and so I'm going to respect the process and say, staff, you've done a great job. Madam Chair, I want to make sure that as the speakers regarding the Film Center, that we look at making sure that they stay on the Oakland Army base. And I definitely understand the need for PCC to have a portion carved out for them. If you've gone down to their facility and walked through it, you really would understand its relationship with port activities, but even more important, the importance of its role as it plays a role in Homeland Security as products are coming in and out of our port, and the importance of having them there. So I want to make sure that there is something that is carved out, that piece that they've asked that be carved out from them as well. Other than that, I look for the RFP to go out in the next 30 days, and then in 6 months bring it back to us to make a final selection. I'm looking forward to that. The same components that was in the RFQ as the representative from the Central Labor Council mentioned, as Sharon mentioned, that also should be included in whatever RFP that goes out. So I'm willing to make the motion, Madam Chair, that is going to be presented on the floor to move this to the next level.
Thank you. I also want to thank the staff. Something wrong, this is too loud. I have a couple of questions here. One is, when you are reviewing all the developers, do you use a point system? So you have, like, you use a point system? Let's put it there.
The review panel's process was more qualitative. We did look at specific, or the panel looked at specific criteria, such as a thorough discussion of their financial capacity. Where would they get the money? How would they propose to finance this? The phasing plan, their expertise, and so forth.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, usually you do that, but you assign so many points for this finance, this, So did you use that system? The reason, let me tell why I asked that question. I'm just curious that right now you recommend 4. I'm just curious, is the 5th or the 6th one, there's a definite line there, so you say 4, or they are very close? So I'm curious. I don't know. See, I don't have the information. I'm just curious why you have 4 instead of 5 or 3.
I think, I'll attempt to answer that, and perhaps Dan Lindheim, who was actually on the review panel, can follow. The review panel showed remarkable consensus around the selection of these 4 teams as being the best qualified for the development concept. There was discussion around Oakland Bay Partners, Prism Realty, and the others. I really want to emphasize what I mentioned in the report, that it was the opinion of the review panel that all of these responders were very qualified, and the ultimate result for Oakland would be to get not just one project, but all 13 of them somewhere in the Oakland community. We had a very strong response of people saying that if you give us adequate land, we'd love to build a high-quality project. But in terms of the specific strategy that the review panel felt was best for this particular property on the Army base, those 4 were, clearly the best choices.
Okay, I agree with Council Member Larry Reed here about PCC, because I also quite a few months last year, in fact, I visited their facility. It's very impressive. I know they handle custom border security and protection. Is it similar to what Ms. Nadell was mentioning before, that she said we should have some kind of custom facilities? No, she's talking about a different project, or just talk about the same?
No, I believe it's the
ECC,
same
you know?
issue.
Huh?
I believe that is the same issue as the council member was
Oh,
mentioning
okay.
before.
Yeah, I know, I support that, but I think they really have a great operation, because it's really tying with the port operation, with Port Oakland. And also, I'm glad that you recommend that the produce market should be included, or they should look into it, because I've been working on that. I don't know how many years. Steve Lowe here will know that, and I think that they really need to be looked at, because if they need to move from Jack London, because it's a terrible place for them there. The traffic is terrible, it's dangerous, and I think if they move, they open up those land for development, which is more like downtown type of development. And then the next thing, there's all this RFP. I was looking some of the floor area ratio. So you did mention on RFQ that you try to target the high density, and even with the fourth proposal, it's actually quite a big difference between 0.28 to 0.63. So in the RFP, are you going to set a target density that you'll be asking for?
I think there's a limit to how specific and quantitative we want to be in the RFP, but we do want to say very clearly that we're interested in a high-density mixed-use project, and then look for very specific information to come back from the developers as far as what's feasible based on a very detailed analysis of the site conditions, including liquefaction issues.
Okay, and the next one, also I look at jobs. Some of them talk about 8,000 jobs, some talk about 2,600. So are you also targeting that too?
Yes, and of course that's interrelated with the density of the project, as you correctly mentioned. So we'll be looking at that very carefully in the RFP.
And what about, are you also going to look at the revenue, the type of business that will generate more revenue?
Absolutely. Direct revenue generated by the project, and also there's a multiplier effect that we'd look for as far as how this project would position Oakland for generating jobs in emerging industries throughout the city.
Okay, good. But because the reason I ask those questions is because I think for developer or for people, they're going to put a lot of efforts and money into answering the RFP. I think that we should do all we can to be, create as much certainty as possible. And if we know what we're looking for, I think it's just fair to let people know. If you're looking for 0.4 RFP, then I think there is need to let them know, not just so that later on we won't be getting into a lot of hassle about that they have a better project, but you want something else. But anyway, I think this is a great report, and I really support moving forward on this. Been a long time, and I also support at least we need to include they look into the PPC. So will be the film. I like the film industry. I think we will be talking about that will be a great place to attract film industry. So the produce market and also the PPC. I think those three I would like to see if you're willing to include them. So thank you.
I'd like to talk.
Can I just say one real quick thing before you do?
Go ahead.
And can you make sure that there's that they understand that there should be some equity participation in terms of ownership, to give local Oaklanders an opportunity at owning part of this, being ownership of this project. Thank you.
I want to start by thanking I think this process was excellent. And I want to thank the panelists because I think I know you put a lot of time in it because I know how much time Zach from my office was out of the office. And I appreciate the amount of work. And I think that you came up with a really good project. And the report is good. You know, we've been here for many years. So I remember when the city council was full, when it was going to be, when Jim Levine and their group were here, and all the promises, and then when the Wayne brothers were here, and all the promises. And I think what we finally got, which I think is useful, is we know that the top 4 are capable of doing this project. And we can all come up with great ideas, but this is not an easy project. It's near the port, it's Army base reuse land, it has a lot of toxics or different issues with it. So to get developers, and that's what this process was about, to get developers who we know are capable of implementing our ideas, I think that is good. I did say that this could take years because infrastructure takes many years. So I want us to be a little careful that what we say today, by the time they're ready to build, the market may be slightly different. We've just seen how the housing market, if this was 5 years ago, we said this should be housing, today we would not be saying that. So let's leave ourselves a little bit of room that when we know when this is built, that we can actually look at what the market is. Saying that, I'm looking at, when the RFP comes back, I'm going to be looking, and I'm still looking at the three items that I've been looking at. How many jobs are produced, the revenue that the city receives, and the vision, because I think this is a gateway, and this really should be a vision, a place that we look at. I have a few little questions, and then I'd like to add some things to the motion. There's on page 3, you say that the Port of Oakland provides an important economic engine to Oakland. I have been hearing that for years and years and years. I think they provide a regional economic engine. I do not believe they provide a Port Oakland economic engine. But if they do, would you please give that in a supplement report or even next time you come back? Because I really want to see what we know that the port has 11 acres, around 11 acres per jobs per acre. I don't know what the revenue that the city receives or the businesses connected to it. And that's important because we keep saying we want to hand this over to the port, but the question is what are we as a city really getting out of? And the other issue is just a comment, it's not a question, another question that came up today that I think was a good question, the community process as a part. The community has been been part of the process all along, so I think you have to make sure the developers continue having meetings in the community and update the community what is happening. The other issue I want to be careful that, we also keep saying, I think there's a contradiction in what we've been doing as a city. We said we wanted West Oakland to stay industrial. At the same time, we want some industrial out of West Oakland. I see that as a contradiction. If we need to decide. And I think that, to move everything, to move so many things out of the area onto the port, onto this land, we need to be very careful about. Given that, I have one question that in front of the city council. We're moving this forward. Do we want this RFP will go forward without us seeing it again? Is that okay? Do we want to see the RFP? I also would like, the big picture of what I would like to change in here, I would like an alternative of regional retail. I don't want to just say this is retail, but I'm not opposed to seeing a plan that would include retail on the base or near the base, because I think there's a lot of area. I'm not clear that the auto mall will ever happen. I think there's a lot of area that there are other places that could happen. And I want to make sure that we pay attention to that. So I would support this proposal, and on the PBC, I'm not ready to make, I don't know anything about the PBC. I don't know how many acres, the customs, the PCC. I don't know how many acres. I don't know. I would like to hear staff's recommendation about including it or not including it. I don't want to stop it because of that, but I would like a little supplement when you come to council where you address that issue. I'd like to have it a little broader, that if it may make sense that it needs to be near the port, to leave it a little open, that we investigate it. It can go on port land, it can go our land. Let's do what we think it makes sense, and I don't know the answer. So some people may be ready to do it. I have no information, so it's hard to support something I have no information on. I also would like to recommend in the motion that we broaden the RFP to allow developers to submit alternative proposals that incorporate a regional retail center on the Army base or close by. And I would, as part of the RFP, I would like the development teams to submit an estimate of the revenue generated from their proposals and a vision of the entrance to the city as the West Gateway. Along with, I don't know, well, no one's moved it, so I'll just throw these out. Along with that, in the process, I have 5 items I'd like to see as part of the process for the RFP. I'd like to make sure that this city staff holds minimum of 2 meetings with the development teams. Second, the staff should investigate the possibility of coordinating infrastructure development in the port-owned property. 3, answer in writing to questions posed in writing. So if the developers are giving you questions in writing, hopefully you return those answers in writing. 4, make all of the studies and reports performed from 1999 to the present regarding the Army base available to the development teams. And 5, provide information on the status of all existing agreements and ENAs for areas within the Army base and the Automall area. I think it's really important that the development teams have all the information that they need to move forward. And my last question is, what happens, we've chosen 4. What happens if 4 do not apply? What happens if only 1 applies? That's a question.
Okay. I think based on the very strong response we received from the 4 teams, I would be very, that is a very unlikely possibility. These teams are very.
Could we have can you think about it between now and next Tuesday so that we know what we're going to do? Because I think you at least need to have some competition here. So you never know in this economic times. It'd be unusual, I would agree with you, but you never know. So I know, Mr. Reed, you have a motion. You didn't formally put on the.
I was willing to support staff recommendations with your additions, but in order for me to do that, I've got to make sure that as we've done the market, the produce market, and the other firm, the film center, that there is. I'm just telling you, it's just extremely important to have PCC, that staff work with them to figure out how to carve out that piece for PCC in terms of its role in playing in Homeland Security. Even more important, they have 300 jobs paying union wages. I don't want to lose those 300 jobs, nor do I want to lose the services that they provide to our port and inspecting all those goods that come in and out of the port facility. And so for me, Madam Chair, I need to make sure that as we've done the film center and the produce market, that they too, that we give staff some direction as it relates to PCC.
And in order to move it up, I'm willing to do that.
Okay.
So let's say that we want to make sure that PCC is, can we do it on either property, but it definitely has to be on one?
I mean, I think where they're at makes a lot of logical sense for them to stay where they are, Madam Chair.
Can we hear Gregory on this?
Sure. I think when this comes to the full council, we can come with a recommendation. Off the cuff, I would say that it makes sense to, if it's the council's desire, to put them in on the same standing as the Oakland Film Center and the produce market, i.e. giving the selected master developer the freedom to say where they would put them and where it makes sense in the context of their plan.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
I in order to move this forward, and I'd like, between now and next Tuesday, I'd like more information.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good.
You're next.
So that is, thank you everyone for participating in this.
And this is moving forward to non-consent for July 15th,
This
correct?
is this a?
It's an action on a report or
Madam Chair,
recommendation.
Non-consent.
Madam Chair, did you get your answer in terms of, I would like to see the RFP come back to
Oh,
your
no.
committee?
Do we want it that, okay, so part of this motion is the RFP comes back in
The-
September.
And the implication of that would be that the RFP would not be able to be released until September.
Oh, well, you know, it's been how many years?
I know. I just want to make sure you understand that. So.
Yes.
And your next item, item 6, is 2 pieces of legislation regarding the St. Joseph Professional Center relocation. The first is a resolution approving the relocation plan for the St. Joseph Professional Center at 2647 International Boulevard. And the second is an agency resolution approving the relocation plan for the St. Joseph Professional Center at the same address. And you have no speakers on the item.
Can we have just one sentence? I mean, more than that. Tell us about this.
Jeff Angel, CETA Housing Development. Approval of NOFA funds for the St. Joseph, for redevelopment of the St. Joseph Center requires that City and Council adopt a relocation plan. Staff recommends adoption of that plan. We're available for questions.
Thank you. Moved and second by consensus. Next item.
And this can go to consent.
Yes.
Your next item, item 7, is 4 pieces of legislation regarding the East Gateway development area of the Oakland Army Base, all related to the deconstruction of buildings 804, 805, 806, 807, and 808 within the East Gateway development area, and dealing with different agreements and documents for the city of Oakland. And you have 3 speakers on the item.
Good afternoon, Madam
Can I
Chair.
ask, excuse me for a minute, if you want to talk, can I ask you to go outside right now so we can hear the speakers? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Al Aletta, Redevelopment Area Manager for CETA. Before you are 4 pieces of legislation requesting authorization to enter into a fair share cost agreement with the Port of Oakland for the deconstruction of warehouses 804, 805, 806, 807, and 808, and also authorization to allocate the funds for that deconstruction. This action actually is required as part of the environmental impact report and a mitigation management reporting program for that. And as you know, the port has already begun deconstruction on the site, building 802. And our understanding is they're planning to move forward with development of their site for the OHIT. And we feel it's in our best interest to work in partnership with the port to deconstruct those buildings to prepare the site. This September, hopefully you'll be getting recommendations for the preparation of the 15-acre ancillary maritime support service truck depot being developed by Oakland Maritime Support Services. So we think it's important to have this administrative mechanism in place in time for that development project in the event it's approved. And in the event, and I want to underscore this, that it's determined that it's not feasible to reuse those buildings as they are, and that OMSS then eventually pulls construction permits, at which time those buildings on the agency property can come down. And in the interest of time, I'll stop there and answer any questions you have.
Can I, before we speakers, can I ask one question? I'm having a little trouble understanding why we're doing it now and not closer to the time when we need this property, because we haven't even picked the developer. And so we're displacing businesses. So could you answer that?
Well, actually, I'd be glad to. The majority of the warehouses in the agency footprint are currently in the area that's being developed by Oakland Maritime Support Services for the truck depot. And so, as I said, we hope to come back to you this September with a recommendation to move forward with that development, at which time we have to be prepared to deconstruct those buildings should that be approved and should it be determined that those buildings cannot be reused as part of that truck depot operation. Buildings 804 through 807.
What about the film center?
The film center actually resides in the smaller buildings, 812, 822, and 823, which are the smaller buildings on the northern side of the East Gateway. So they wouldn't come into effect in terms of this agreement. This agreement is specifically for the big warehouses, those 233,000 square foot.
So it's not
warehouses.
every building.
It's not every
It's a little
building.
confusing. So maybe you could clarify that.
It's the large
Thank you.
buildings,
Yeah.
the very large
It
buildings.
sounded like it was every building. So Thank you. So there, well, let's hear this. We have speakers here?
Yes, you do. Richard Nevlin, Steve Lowe, and Sanjeev Honda.
Richard Nevlin, a member of OCAG and someone who was one of the first volunteers on the USS Hornet. Historic preservation is a part and needs to be a part of Oakland, and these are part of the historic district, the large warehouses. WOCAG and the historic preservation committees in the city of Oakland should have a look at this and have some review, just as WOCAG should have some review directly before this process proceeds and during the process, rather than immediately moving to authorize deconstruction or demolition of these old growth redwood buildings. That it is disappointing that it's moving forward this early in the process. And I believe some fragment or front end of each of these buildings, or some of them, or at least one, could be part of a historic preservation element on the Oakland Army Base. Currently, as far as I know, there is none. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm Sanjeev Honda, East Bay News Service. The first thing I wanted to point out is that ultimately there is still great confusion, including from the last item, even more so, about what not only the role of the port vis-a-vis the city is, but what some of your cooperative agreements might be and where they might have fallen apart. I did want to point out that not one, not two, not three, but at least 5 port employees, all management employees, have left the port in recent years. And in 2 cases, they filed lawsuits. In all 5 cases, there was some kind of a settlement where they received big chunks of money. That included 2 of their former chief financial officers. That included one of their former port attorneys. And the Port of Oakland is invoking confidentiality in not releasing that information. They have a deputy port attorney named Danny Wan who is willing to look the other way when it comes to things like the Brown Act, the Public Records Act, and so forth. And it's my great pleasure first to point out that not only I and any other member of the public, but you as council members will now have the ability, as of January 1 of 2009, under legislation that was signed by Governor Schwarzenegger this past Thursday, that A, bans confidentiality agreements, and B, provides that there cannot be any discrimination by any agency, public agency, against any of the members of its own legislative body or other public officials as to who's provided it what information. So if you give it to one, you have to give it to all. And that should start opening up some of this can of worms that has been festering for quite some time related to the Army base. The relevance of that to this particular item in particular is that there have been deals cut all over the place that the public and even some of the council members don't know about. And if you go back historically to all the operations of the Oakland Base Reuse Authority and some of the shenanigans Dick Spees pulled under the guise of public interest, that's all going to start coming out. And hopefully, as this request for proposals is vetted, some of those issues will also see the light of day. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I add just a couple of quick points?
There's one more speaker.
Oh.
And then, yeah, it's too late now. Thank you. There is not one more speaker. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do want to clarify that currently Pacific Coast Container resides in 3 of these warehouses. They have 1 bay in building 805, 1 bay in building 806, and 3 bays in building 808. Each of these bays currently is in the footprint, or at least 3 of them are in the footprint of Oakland Maritime Support Services proposed truck depot. So there's a dilemma here, obviously, but I wanted to thank you, Dan, for asking me to point that out. The other point is regarding the historic preservation, the reuse of the materials. That is absolutely a priority. And in fact, Oakland Maritime Support Services has built the reuse of those materials into their development plan. And also with regard to maintaining some of the look and feel of those structures.
Thank you. I need a motion. Or questions, I'm sorry.
Given what Al just said, I don't think we should move forward on taking any actions on this until the RFP process is completed and staff has had a conversation with PCC around this whole discussion. So I'm not willing to support it. I think we should wait and bring it back later, Madam Chair.
Can I, my note here from my staff is saying that the port, they're working with the port for relocation, is that correct?
Well, I know they've made lots of attempts to find a new site. I don't believe they've been successful yet in finding new sites. They have actually several locations within the former Oakland Army base, not just on the agency's property, but also on Union Pacific and port property as well, cold storage facilities. And I don't think there's been a long-run solution for those as well.
But I think we're talking about a short-term solution here, not a long-term solution.
Right, and I do want to just clarify, though, that if we entered an exclusive negotiating agreement with Oakland Maritime Support Services last year to develop the required 15 acres for ancillary maritime support services. If we table this item and wait for the result of the RFP, then we delay possibly significantly the construction of that truck depot.
Well, I can get up and walk out the room. It's only be two people, two members of the committee. And if one of them vote with me while I'm out the room, then it's not going to go forward.
Okay.
So I think it makes some logical sense, Al, to delay it.
Well, maybe what we should do, Mr. Reed, I know, Mr. Chang, why don't you talk and then I have an idea.
It's important.
Don't look at it.
It's important also to know what the delay means, and if it's it's not that critical that we can actually wait is one thing. If it's really critical to control everything off, then you need to let us know. And so, what is it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was distracted there. This
send them to the back of the classroom.
I can only I can't multitask. I'm sorry, but we do have to move forward with some agreement with the port eventually in terms of the deconstruction of these buildings. It's a matter of timing when all is said and done. And again, we feel it's the most effective for us to work together in taking them down and making sure that it's done in a way that is perfectly aligned with the EIR and the Mitigation Management Reporting Program, which means deconstruction and reuse of the materials on the site as much as possible. The timing is important, and I think that the consideration for Pacific Coast Container and finding them or enabling them to find other spaces to continue their operation on the port obviously is a priority, it sounds like, and we should consider that as part of this action, but we also want to take into account the priority of moving forward with the truck parking depot as well.
Can I ask you a question? Have you started negotiations with the port yet?
Well, the draft agreement in your packet that articulates the basic terms and conditions of the fair share.
So you're
cost
ready
agreement.
to implement. You're not really going to negotiate. You're ready to execute.
Well, we have to negotiate every project. Every contract that would go forward in this agreement, we would have an opportunity to negotiate.
No, you're missing my point. I mean, usually when you come for a negotiating, it takes some time. So I was wondering if you could come back in September. We could okay you to negotiate, figure out something with the PCC, and then come back for execution when you come back with the maritime piece. So it doesn't stop anything. In that way, you're moving forward, but we're not giving you the go ahead to actually implement until you really need it, which is when you have the contract, when you need to enter into the contract with the maritime, but you're giving you the summer to work out what to do. And I'm wondering if that would work. I don't know.
I believe that will work, yes.
Okay, so that would be, it would be that they negotiate, but they have to come back to City Council in September to execute.
I don't have any problems with that, just as long as, look, I didn't run for political office to put a business out of business that's providing 300 jobs and they're paying union scale wages and they're providing such an incredible value service in terms of port-related business. And so, I just want to make it absolutely clear, anything that you guys come back with that impacts their ability to operate, I'm just going to go ballistic. I'm going to just do one of my crazy routines. And whether I'm successful or not, I'm not going to be a happy camper.
Mr. Lindheim.
You want to go ahead first?
Sure. I just want to speak to the council that the agency has a very good operating relationship with PCC. We have worked collaboratively on many occasions when they've had issues with their buildings. We continue to work with them on their lease issues. We respect the council members' wishes, and we as well are not in the business to put 300 employees out of work or a thriving Oakland business out of business. So we will definitely work with them in coordinating the deconstruction of any of the properties that they are now leasing from the redevelopment agency.
I just want to make sure that the council members, Larry? Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody was aware that there's this physical problem, that the property line between the port and the city goes right through the middle of these warehouses. And it's one thing to keep them there, but if the port wants to bring down their side, there's a real problem about keeping the warehouses vertical. And there may be ways to do that, but the angles are cut in such a way that it's a real physical impediment. So one of the discussions about keeping PCC there was trying to find them an alternative site rather than keeping them in the exact same warehouse where they currently are because of this problem.
I understand. I've been out there a couple of times, Mr. Lindheim, but thank you. But I said what I had to say.
So the motion, as I understand it, Mr. Reed, is that we support the city negotiating with the port on joint demolition, but you have to bring back to the city council execution before you move forward.
Okay, so we'll strike execution from the resolutions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this can go up as consent with that? Okay. Next item.
Your next item is item 8, which is the agency resolution authorizing the agency administrator to negotiate, execute, and amend professional services contracts as needed without returning to the agency for the design, development, and production of a quarterly newsletter for the redevelopment agency in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for fiscal year 2008 to 2009. You have one speaker on the item.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Bruner and members of the Community and Economic Development Committee. I'm Stephanie Floyd Johnson of the Community and Economic Development Agency. This is a resolution that's authoring the redevelopment division to continue to produce a quarterly newsletter that is intended to promote the programs and projects that the various redevelopment agencies or redevelopment project areas are funding. The quarterly newsletter is entitled Redeveloping Oakland, and its main purpose is and it is being sent to members of the project area committees. It's being distributed through the neighborhood service coordinators. I've just worked that relationship up with Claudia Albano. So the distribution within the residential community as well as through the business community, I think is pretty good. It's pretty sufficient. The newsletter includes from time to time articles on the programs. This particular issue, July, which there are copies that we've distributed here today, lists all of the programs that redevelopment areas are funding. So that's a pretty comprehensive listing. The first issue was very explanatory about what generally is redevelopment and where the areas are when they were established and their boundaries. So that's a particular issue that has a good shelf life. I just want to mention that the newsletter is intended really for a web-based distribution, but we are printing the newsletters. We're printing it in English and it's being translated into Chinese, Vietnamese, and Spanish. So that is a pretty vast distribution and seems to be consistent with our equal access ordinance, which is the intent of this publication as well. So I can answer questions if you have any.
I have one question. Can I? It says that money is coming out of the PACs And I've gotten, and I've been in trouble from my PAC. So it says 10,000 Broadway MacArthur San Pablo Operation Fund. So I would like to know, has that PAC approved this?
These are, the funds have been coming through from operations for the redevelopment areas and have not gone to the PACs.
Okay,
And maybe Mr. Hunter can embellish that.
I'm going to be in trouble if I support this without it having gone through the PAC.
Each redevelopment area has an administrative budget that absolutely at no point in time goes to the PAC, where we fund things like computer equipment, furniture, supplies, and this money is coming out of that administrative budget that would not go to the PAC under normal circumstances.
Well, then I'm going to ask, I know that the MacArthur Broadway San Pablo has the least bit of funds, has a baby amount of funds compared to everyone else. And I know there's two groups that are bigger, but it's pretty hefty for a little group. So I'm wondering what % you take out anyway. What % do you take out?
We looked at it going across the board. We did try to leverage the funds from the larger amounts from the larger areas. That's why you see that the Broadway MacArthur San Pablo and the what's the other one? 10,000. I'm sorry, West Oakland, which also has less money than, say, Coliseum, Central City East, and Central District. So we did try to balance it. We did not go to a exact mathematical calculation of how many residents or square miles of area or anything of that nature. But we did try to balance it, and we did not try to burden the smaller areas with larger amounts.
Let's get a speaker. Personally, I don't think this is even enough, because I know I barely have a redevelopment area.
For the record, Sanjeev Handa, East Bay News Service, and I've been living and breathing printing since I was about 12 years old when I put out my first newspaper to take out school board candidates, where I used to live in Hayward. So, first thing I want to point out is that you're only talking about 10 of the $60,000 for printing. You're talking about $20,000 for design. Then there's $18,000 for translation costs, and then various other miscellaneous costs. There's nothing that says it has to be a 4-color fancy one like this. You could do it like the Oakland Digest and newsprint. It would actually have more impact, because the perception of glossy 4-color is somebody's trying to hoodwink you out of something. And the city of Oakland has tried, in the last 15 years I've been following it, 7 different attempts to do newsletters. There are thousands and thousands of brochures printed every month by the Oakland Library, by Parks and Rec and others, that sit around gathering dust because they don't get distributed. And even when they do get distributed to branch libraries and others and community centers, they sit because not very many people pick them up. In case it is not clear, people are reading less and less. And the idea of just having a glossy handout doesn't really serve a productive purpose. It may make a few people feel good about what they're doing on their project. But I note that there are 2 issues that have already been out. This is April and this is July. So you're halfway through if you're talking about a year. But I'm assuming April got funded out of last year's budget, and July is going to get funded out of this year's budget. In any event, the bigger issue is the reach and who's going to actually see it. There are currently 26 publications circulated in Oakland, ranging from the Tribune and the Chronicle to the Oakland Post, the Oakland Globe, the Sunday Morning News, and so forth. And almost every one of those publications, 30 to 40% of the copies on a per issue basis, end up not even getting touched by human hands other than the distributor, going straight into recycling. The rate here is higher. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, a few years ago when Bill Claggett was the CETA director, you tried the same thing. You put together a wonderful little newsletter in 1999, Jerry Brown's picture on it. And if you go out and look at it now, 90% of the projects that were mentioned and what was going to happen never materialized, including many of the hotels and high-rise buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any motion?
I'd like to move the item, Madam Chair. I think we don't do enough to let folks know exactly what we are doing in the city, and certainly this newsletter makes a logical avenue to do it. And so I'm happy to move the item.
Moved in second. I'm going to abstain right now. I'm going to check in with my PAC, see if they're okay. I understand they don't approve it, and then I'll vote. I may change my vote at council.
Understood.
And
Thank you.
Do you want this to go to consent or non-consent?
It can go to non-consent.
Non-consent?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I always flip those.
Consent?
Consent.
Okay. Your next item, item 9, is a resolution authorizing the city administrator or her designee to negotiate and enter into a grant agreement with St. Mary's Center in an amount not to exceed $350,000 for the period of July 1st, 2008 to June 30th, 2009, for the acquisition of properties for St. Mary's Center Village at 925 Brockhurst Street. And you have two speakers on the item. One was Councilmember Renee Dale, but she already expressed her support, and the other is Carol Johnson from St. Mary's Center.
Good evening, Chairperson Bruner, members of committee. My name is Susan Shelton from the Department of Human Services. Before you is a resolution seeking your authorization for the city administrator or a designee to enter into a grant agreement with St. Mary's Center for the acquisition of property at 925 Brockhurst, to be known as the St. Mary's Center Village. On page 3, you will note the funds that have been raised to date and the gap. $350,000 of that gap is this request before you. I'm standing here for my colleague Michelle Bird from CETA, and I can respond to any questions you have along with her staff who's present.
Thank you. Why don't we hear from the speaker?
Carol Johnson. I'm the director of St. Mary's Center, and I'm here to ask your support for this. St. Mary's Center has been serving the city of Oakland for 35 years. This is our 35th anniversary, to extremely low-income seniors and preschoolers. So we'll thank you for your support.
Thank you.
I'd like to move the item, Madam Chair, if there's no questions from you or Mr. Chang.
Moved and second by consensus. Next item.
And this can go to consent.
Correct.
Your next item, item 10, is an agency resolution amending resolution number 2008-0006 to revise and expand the Central District Basement Backfill and Repair Program, allocate an additional $2 million for the revised and expanded program for a total aggregate amount of $3,100,000 from fiscal year 2007-2009 Central District funds, and authorize the agency administrator to make grants and loans under the program without returning to the agency. You have one speaker on the item.
Good afternoon, Chair Bruner and members of the committee. I'm George Darney, Community and Economic Development Agency. We're essentially requesting that the council consider two actions, basically two amendments to the existing basement loan program that were approved in February of 2008. The first would be to revise the existing basement program to make structural repair work eligible, and the second would be to expand the program to include sub-sidewalk basements underlying the Latham Square and the Old Oakland Streetscape project areas. The proposed program would create greater financial incentives for the owners to participate, and would allow the publicly funded streetscape improvements to proceed shortly thereafter. I can take questions on this item.
Can we have the speaker?
Jonathan Baer.
Good evening, council members, and thank you for your time. My name is Jonathan Baer, and I'm the chair of the City of Oakland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm also a board member of Old Oakland Neighbors, and I've worked extensively in the uptown area. The sidewalk improvements that we're talking about have been promised to developers and business owners for years and have led to tens of millions of dollars in investment. And I'm not including Forest City or the Fox in that figure. The years of delay have been very disappointing to developers and business owners who have been relying on the potential for increased pedestrian access to their businesses and for the consumers of their properties. What we're talking about here is it's an expansion of the program in order to allow for the backfilling of the basements, which I think is an issue that should have been decided on when the project was first conceived. I've been giving input on this project for more than 2 years, and I don't understand why it took so long for people to figure out that there were basements underneath the sidewalk. But this is also part of a narrowing of the project scope. Broadway will no longer have widened sidewalks and instead will have street furniture. And as I brought up to city staff more than 2 years ago at a public meeting on the project, Broadway is very congested for pedestrians, and and if they're not going to widen the sidewalk, but they're going to add trees and street furniture, that will only further narrow the space available for pedestrians to walk down the street, leading to Pedlock, which already exists around 14th and Broadway and has gotten worse since the trees went back in. Trees and street furniture and bicycle racks are not necessary on Broadway. Broadway is a transportation corridor, not a destination. Bicycle racks should be near destinations. Street furniture could serve AC Transit buses, but I don't really see the point of putting benches up and down Broadway. So I ask you to consider the necessity of pedestrian traffic on Broadway when you look at this proposal, and not to allow these vital sidewalk improvements to fall by the wayside. Thank you.
Any questions before we have a motion? I have.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, I do have not a question. I'm wondering. I'm not convinced this whole program's terrific to begin with, but we did vote the $1 million. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering why we cannot revisit the structural issue. Is fine. Why don't we just leave it at $1 million for now and see if anyone is going to take us up on it? And then if they do, come back to us after we start seeing that money's being used, and then we add money there. But to put a whole pot of another $2 million in,
Yeah.
when we don't know if it's even going to work, I'm having trouble with.
You know, we did have detailed discussions with the property owners on Broadway. There were 6 property owners, and we're also looking at the Latham Telegraph project, which is pretty much the centerpiece of the downtown streetscape program, as well as the Old Oakland project, which the previous speaker just spoke as the chair of a committee. We are trying to move for all of these basements, all of these streetscape projects have sub-sidewalk basements underneath.
I know. You know what? You're not answering my question because you're giving me the sale job, which is good. That's what you're supposed to do. But my question is, why don't we wait? I'm not saying no. I mean, I don't. You may have the votes to go forward with $3 million, but why don't we say let's go with the $1 million now? If you come back in September, October, and you're really having a lot of people saying yes, then I'm fine with adding more money. That's my question. Why don't we see if this works? This new idea works.
We've got approximately $25 million in downtown streetscape projects, and just to try to answer the broader question, we've got $100 million in the uptown. We're trying to launch several different initiatives, including a streetscape project in Old Oakland that was conceived over 10 years ago. We just received $5 million from the state of California in the Prop 1C application to fund specifically basement repair. I don't know if 3 months is going to make a whole lot of difference. As I've stated, the recommendations were fairly well thought through, and I'll leave it to the council to decide.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion. I'd recommend that you do $1 million, have them go forward, but if you want to do 3, let's put a motion on the table.
Mr. Hunter, did you want to say something? Madam Chair, Mr. Hunter, did you want to interject anything else? Or Mr. Linha?
Well, the question was how many additional basements are in the pipeline to be...
No, that was not my question.
Well, what I wanted to point out was that the reason that the agency is asking for the authorization at this point in time is we have had discussions with a number of the property owners. We had, as you're well aware, a previous program that did not quite go this far, and those property owners were reluctant to actually engage in the program, but have said if this component was available, then they would be more likely to engage the program and start the necessary repair of their basement so that we could move forward on the larger streetscape projects in most of the Latham Telegraph area as well as Broadway. I have not personally had any conversations with the property owners in the Old Oakland, but based on what I've heard from the other areas, I would assume that this would be the one carrot that gets them to move on repairing the basements, because we are at a deadlock now and we cannot move this project forward without having them do their piece.
But, Madam Chair, but as to the question that the chair raised, relative to, funding it for $1 million, come back in 3 months to see whether or not any of the other property owners.
My only fear, and that does sound like it could potentially work, my only fear is that once we go out there, they want to move quite quickly, and if we delay them, then it's just credibility. But that is something we can definitely explore.
I was going to support what the staff recommend, and then as far as you're concerned, just to reverse, is to come back in 3 months and then see how they're doing.
Well, just to see if people
the
are
other
going-
way around. Basically, the money's there for the full project. If 3 months from now it's not moving, then maybe we can do something about. If they are moving well, then we don't have to, because he's so worried that
Right, put a motion.
the process.
I know.
Well, but I just move the support staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second, 2 yeses, 1 no. Next item.
Item 11 is being continued to the July 22nd committee
Madam
meeting.
Chair, can we also add another caveat that in 3 months, that you come back to this committee
Yeah, come back
to determine whether or not
We absolutely.
the program is
Thank you.
working,
Yeah.
and then with some other options, if it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you want item 10 to come to go to non-consent or
No, it
consent?
can go to consent.
Okay.
I assume that other people aren't gonna.
And again, item 11 was continued to the July 22nd committee meeting, and that takes us to item 12, which is several pieces of legislation regarding the Fox Theater project. All our agency resolutions dealing with amendments to the disposition and development agreements, and authorizing entrance into a tenant improvement agreement, authorizing entrance into a loan agreement, authorizing entrance into a loan agreement between the agency and the Oakland School for the Arts, and the first one was for the agency and the Fox Theater master tenant. And the last is an agency resolution, I'm sorry, not the last, but the next is an agency resolution authorizing the administrator to apply for inappropriate grant funds from several agencies. And the last is an agency resolution authorizing the administrator to accept and appropriate money in the historic mitigation funds. And you have 8 speakers on the item.
In the interest of time, I will go through the resos very quickly. What the agency is requesting is authorization on to fund a number of loans and a couple of grants to support improvements at the Fox Theater, both to the entertainment complex as well as to the school. And the first resolution would provide a bridge loan to Fox Oakland Theater, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $7.45 million for the completion of renovations at the theater. The second resolution authorizes the administrator to provide a tenant improvement grant to Gas Entertainment in an amount not to exceed $2 million to fund renovations at the theater as well. And the third reso provides is requesting and authorizing an agency loan to Fox Theater Master Tenant LLC in an amount not to exceed 2.7 for tenant improvements. The fourth is a loan to the Oakland School for the Arts in an amount not to exceed $2.3 million to fund tenant improvements in the wraparound portion of the school. And the fifth reso seeks authorization for staff to apply for a number of grants that would total $1.4 million. So from a number of state departments as well as federal agencies, and to go to offset some of the costs related to the additional funds needed to fund the rehab and the renovation to the Fox, and then also the 6th reso authorizes an acceptance of a $68,750,000 in historic mitigations from the Signature at Broadway Grand project, and dedicates that to the Fox Theater. The approval of these resolutions would allow for the needed construction at the Fox to move forward, so that we can have stay true to the proposed and tentative opening date of the School of the Performing Arts in September of this year, and the Fox Theater in October of this year. These additional funds are requested due to cost overruns related to the historical nature of the building, structural design changes through the process, and needed tenant improvements that in 2006, when the original budget for the Fox was approved, we did not have an idea at that time the extent of tenant improvements needed on the restaurant or the Fox in particular. So what we are asking is that these be approved. Staff has reviewed and supports the proposed tenant improvements, and we are prepared to answer a number of questions that we know you may have concerning these grants, loans, and repayment options.
How many speakers do we have?
8.
A minute apiece.
All right. Jim, and excuse me if I mess up your last name, Jim Numnichuk, David Cartwright, Bruce Lawrence, Susan Smart, Patricia Dedekian, Phil Tagami, Gene Hazard, and Sanjeev Honda. And as the chair says, the speaker's time has been taken to 1 minute.
Can we go? Have someone come forward? We'll try to take as little of the next committee as possible, but
very brief. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Susan Smart, Far City. We are the developers of the Uptown project, just next door to the Fox Theater. Over the years, the council has been kind enough to invest quite a lot of money in the downtown area to revitalize the arts and entertainment district. And the efforts of those investments are now coming to fruition. Restaurants are opening, people are on the street, the community is really becoming active. And we think that the Fox Theater is a critical part of that, and the synergy created by the Fox Theater and the Oakland School for the Arts is critical to the continuing efforts of everyone in the district, and we hope that you will approve this. Thank you.
thank you.
Again, Jim Nemechek, I'd like to concede my.
Yeah, we heard that already. That's okay. Next. If you conceded your time, just have the person tell us who's speaking.
I'm Bruce Lawrence, founding president of the board of the Oakland School for the Arts, involved with this school for 7.5 years. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. We just completed our 3rd graduation ceremony at the Oakland Museum. We've graduated a total of 150 students. We have in excess of 95% attendance, go from 8 to 5:30 for the middle school, the high school 8 to 4, and we're now working on a project with St. Mary's and some graduates from MIT to offer math tutoring from 4 to 5:30. So if you're a single parent or dual career couple, you know your kids are safe and the end game is college. We have about a 98% college acceptance rate. So I think operations are doing well. We've gone through many transitions. We have a great director in Don Harris, and he was very successful at the High School for Performing Arts in San Francisco. I'm going to be followed by Dave Cartwright, who'll talk about the funding scheme, revenue streams that we'll have to help take care of this bridge loan. And again, I thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Cartwright, and I'm the finance director for the Oakland School for the Arts. And these are difficult times, and I'm sure that you can appreciate that. Originally, when I came on board a year ago, we had a $10 million donation lined up to fund our tenant improvements and also to fund our operations and form an endowment. That deal fell through. Also, since I came on board, we found out that our tenant improvement costs are going to be $7 million rather than $4 million. Despite this, I believe that we're still going to meet our goal of funding our tenant improvements. We've raised $1 million from a single foundation last year, $500,000 from another individual.
This August, we're getting another $1 million from another individual. We also have $400,000 coming in from another earmark. And we've had expressed interest from 2 parties to contribute $1.5 million each towards a name for each of the wings. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your support of the school.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm Sanjeev Honda, East Bay News Service. I told you so. When we were here in July of '06, I said the budget that was being presented was probably half of what it would cost. We started with 60 million, we're now at almost 90 million. Keep in mind that that does not include all the money that Jerry Brown finagled during his term as mayor by using the bully pulpit, so to speak. And the best example is the billboards that were put up at the Port of Oakland property coming off the Bay Bridge, where $15 million was diverted by the at the former mayor's request to the School for the Arts. This council recently in the budget session decided to restore additional funding for the School for the Arts. By my count, you're at $123 million of public money and counting. By the time this is said and done, this may cost more than the Raiders do. And I'm sure Mr. Tagami will talk about the costs or the values of tax credits and some of the other things and how that's not exactly public money. Ultimately, all of that is public money. It is just coming from other sources. It's a classic game of government welfare. And if the Oakland schools were given 1/3 the resources per pupil that are being given to the School for the Arts, the Oakland School District might be in the top 10%, instead of the bottom 10% in the country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Bruner, members of the committee, I tend to enjoy Mr. Honda's factual presentations from time to time, but he does stray into hyperbole occasionally, and today's one of those days. When we look at our efforts on this project, I don't think we ever anticipated that we're going to be doing the level of fundraising to the number of sources, and I think if you make study of it, we're soon to be in excess of over 30 different sources of funding. The lion's share, which staff will cover later, come from outside of city sources, and clearly what we're seeking at this point in time is your support for bridge financing, because those various sources are on a different clock and schedule than we need to finish the project and complete the construction as planned. I feel very good about the commitments we've made, not only to local hire and to minority contractors and a myriad of other social programs that also honor labor, and we're proud to say that this project's been built with 100% union labor, but also we're happy to report that as of this date, we have 21 ex-offenders who have had the opportunity to seek employment and get employed at the Fox Theater, and we have commitments from those subcontractors to keep them employed. Lastly, the fundraising of the Fox is not done. We need to endow the Fox next. And again, the goal here is to see that these sources identified pay off the agency loans, and then we need to work with our friends at Friends of the Fox, and our goal is to endow the Fox with between $4 to $5 million to make sure that the operating structure as adopted with 2 triple net leases, one for the school and one for the theater, requires that the city has never sought for any additional financial assistance once the theater is open. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Gene Hazzard, the Oakland Black Caucus. I like to associate myself with some of Mr. Honda's comments, and they're not just hyperbole. You know, here we got increase of, the part you're going to get free money, and then the city's going to go on the lam for more money. And when these things are made mention of, you disregard them. You disregarded Mr. Honda's comments earlier in 2006. And now they low bid, and then they do cost overruns. And then the city is on the lam for those. When are you going to wake up? Or is this a funding scheme, as it was almost a Freudian slip by a couple of speakers back? It is a funding scheme. And the citizens of Oakland are on the lam for it all. So I don't support this, and I hope you don't support it, which I know is fruitless.
That's all the speakers. I have some comments. Either of you have questions or comments?
Comment, and that's related to the $1.4 million out of the expected sale of Oak Knoll. I'm trying to understand why that funding source was tapped into.
Back when Oak Knoll, the city was competing, or the agency was competing for to purchase Oak Knoll from the Navy, there was funds provided to the Homeless Collaborative, and to buy them out of their rights to property at Oak Knoll. And the only place that the agency had funds available was in land sale proceeds from the Central District. So the Central District made a loan to Oak Knoll, to the future Oak Knoll redevelopment area, to fund that buyout, and that needs to be that does have to be repaid through the sale of the 5.45 acres, which the agency ultimately received from the Navy as payment for buying out the Homeless Collaborative.
I mean, okay, I'll accept that one. That was good. That was real good. I like that, Gregory.
I have a. Are you done? Okay. I can't follow that. Why wasn't that in our report? I cannot tell you how long it took my staff to create that chart for me. Been very nice if it had been in the report.
That was actually, we met this morning and collectively wanted to consolidate and make it just visible and easy, and we absolutely will. It was a brainchild this morning.
He's good today. He's on today. This was a complicated, trying to separate the stuff was really complicated. So please, but let me make my comments separate from that. I was just so surprised. I think the Fox is terrific. And I think, far as having just gone with Susan a month or so ago and looking at Forest City development, downtown is just going to be different, and it's going to keep getting better and better. So I applaud this project, and I know it has taken a huge amount of time to do it. But I am a little concerned. I just have to, I'm not ready to vote no, but I am concerned with what Gina's and what we're talking about is that we, come in at a low bid and we're this high. Because I understand that you projected a $60 million project and it's now an $82.7 million project. Is that correct? So that's about almost a 37% increase, if my math is right.
The projections are right. We are at 82.7 million. I will state that as I stated in my initial comments, that when in 2006, there were definitely components of this that were not figured into as related to tenant improvements because we did not have leases with operators. Also, as it stated in the report, there have been to be eligible for some of the historic tax credits. There has had to be major redesigns of the actual structure, which costs millions of dollars in additional costs, as well as some life safety issues we've had. Unfortunately, when this project started, there have been code changes that have come into effect that we were not able to be grandfathered into the previous code because they were life safety issues that we've had to that led to cost overruns. We thought we did a pretty good job, and we can go through them in detail on all of the additional costs associated with the project, that some of which were impossible for us to foresee 2 years ago until we actually got into the meat of the project.
Okay, and my one thing other question I have that I want to, in your loan to the school, it says, whereas the loan will be for 3 years term with an interest rate of 5%. What happens if it's not repaid?
It is my understanding that we feel that that is a fairly secure funding source, that the funding for the school will come from billboard proceeds. And we feel
But
that
they
that is
can
a good
always take
source.
those billboard proceeds and do something else. So I would be happier, and I think it's true of all the loans, that if it's a loan, if it's not a grant, that there's some language in here, and I don't know what our normal language is, so I don't want to make it up. But with all the loans, that there's some kind of language that, I don't know if we generally do penalties or we have some kind of, what am I thinking of? The word, collateral that
Collateral,
is
yes.
behind it. But I think for all the loans, we need that. Now, I'm not saying that you're never going to come and take a loan and say, now let's make that loan something else. I'm not saying, because I understand how this goes. Been around long enough. But if it's a loan, let's put equity, let's put collateral next to it.
We can explore that. I am somewhat concerned because of the, normally when we look at collateral,
Well, you could
it's
do it
not-
for the,
it's-
if you think the billboard's absolute, you could do it with the billboard as a collateral.
That would be the only,
So that
off
is-
the top of my head, that would be
right,
the only.
that would be fine.
Collateral, okay.
That takes it away from a promise to an absolute. I think someone behind you has an idea.
I was just going to say, we have proceeds from the billboard that's securing lease by the school, and what we did was we have an assignment of the proceeds directly to us, so that they don't, right, so they basically don't touch the school at all. They come through us, and if the school ever goes, then right, I know billboard number 2, so we may be able to do something similar to that with billboard number 2, if you're concerned about that.
Yeah, just put
A
something, I mean,
structure like that.
make it a normal loan. When we give loans to businesses, we make them put their houses up, we make them do something, so make it a normal loan. Make it all of these a normal loan.
We can do
And
that.
then if they don't work out, you'll come back and see us.
We'll include that in the terms.
Okay, so can we have a motion with that? Okay, moved and second by consensus, accepting these loans and grants, but the loans will have normal collateral language. Thank you.
Consent or non-consent?
Non-consent.
And Mr. Honda has a card for open forum.
Okay.
Again, for the record, I'm Sanjeev Honda, East Bay News Service. Let me pick up where I left off. And the first part of that is simply, to point out that in the staff report itself for the Fox Theater, it states very clearly that staff used $60 million because that's what the money that was available. So that's the code to read, is that you were given basically figures that were not accurate for the sole purpose that $60 million was available. And since Mr. Tagami has a wonderful way of doing things with figures that have nothing to do with reality, which is why he's going to make a great politician someday, and that is that the amounts that I'm talking about are in the staff report. I'm not making those up. And normally I wouldn't respond to him because he's known for his hyperbole, exaggeration, and misrepresentations that are legendary throughout the real estate community and the city of Oakland. So, to the point where he's physically threatened and confronted people. We have photos, lots of media outlets of him and Darrell Carey going at it and various other kinds of things. So the reality is that the city of Oakland has put in more than $200 million. That is equivalent to 40% of 1 year general fund into subsidies in the uptown area. So of course you're going to get Susan Smart coming in here and wanting this. She wants her project to succeed. It already looks like a blighted project. It hasn't been completed, and it's already falling apart. The inconvenience to the public, the sidewalks that are still closed, the trash and debris that her construction workers have generated, the amount of diesel soot and all that's been generated while trucks sit in double park because she and her Forest City crew are not on the scene. They're in San Francisco. They don't live here. They do not know anything about the Oakland community other than how to kiss Jerry Brown's butt and get the right loans you need and then put up schlocky construction that will fall apart in a few years. It's called a project. Go look at Emeryville, what Bridge Housing did over there. Look at Emery Bay Club and Apartments, how it's fallen apart. That's the kind of schlock that you're subsidizing. That's the kind of thing that residents of Oakland are paying for while you're cutting millions out of the police and fire department budget. Thank you.